Hey everybody, welcome. Happy Monday or Tuesday, depending on where you are in the world. We're going to be continuing on our Tavern Inn encounter map. It's going to be part two. We started this tavern earlier in the month, about 2 weeks ago. So we're going to go ahead and finish this. As per usual, I'll wait a few moments for people to filter in before we get started. Feel free to just take a look at what we created here. There's a lot going on here. We have multiple floors, at least two floors, including a ground floor, as well as a basement, a roof, which I'm looking forward to this because there's going to be an encounter on there. Hey, Freeman57, hello, and hey, Alice. Glad that you are both here. Happy to see you both. Awesome. Looking forward to this stream quite a bit because there's a lot of fun things that we're going to be doing here. Hey, Magnus Ballard. Glad that you're here. Thanks for saying hello. Appreciate it. Love it when people shoot some salutations in the chat. Always enjoy chatting with the people, our users, which we have an incredible user base. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to zoom in and zoom in at what we created while I wait a few moments for people to filter in. I can even do a little bit of a recap. Hey, Merlin Master. First time chatter. Glad that you're here. Hi. Hey, another first time chatter. Hey, Conquest King. New to D&D and DMing. Cool. Awesome. And the map building has been insane. Hey, I hope the tool has been helpful here in your first time or being used to, or getting accustomed to D&D. It's a lot of fun. Tabletop is a lot of fun. Really, really enjoy it. Glad that you're here. Awesome. All right. Hello, iKnight12. Welcome. Hey, awesome. So much chatter in the chat. I love that. Another first time chatter. Hey, Ramosa. Yeah, having multiple floors is so nice, and having them all visible is nice as well. I'm not sure how a lot of VTTs handle the weird aspect ratio. You can still load this in this way, right? Otherwise, you can always just resize this so it'll fit an aspect ratio that will fit to whatever VTT that you're using. But we expanded it a little bit, made it wide. I love multiple floors, and we're gonna put like one focal point and a possible encounter on each floor. And so I'll show you how I set that up, because it's really fun to, like, your players, you never know what they're going to do. So I always just set up something in every room, every floor, because they might just completely abandon whatever I had set up on the first floor or ground floor and they'll go somewhere else. So I always just like pack in whatever I can. And if there's something that's key to the plot that's taking place within it, what I'll generally do is if they don't get to it on that floor or they miss it somehow, I'll put it in the next room, something more easier. So we're going to go over how I kind of approach this. Hey, awesome, Ramosa. Love to hear that, Ramosa TV. Yeah, good. Well, there's a lot that you can do with that. All right, well, I think enough people are here, so we're just going to jump in. So we're going to be doing part two. We're going to be focusing on interiors. In the first episode, we based our building off of this fantasy regional stamp right here. Hey, Becca, glad that you're here. Hello, hello, yay. Some of my favorite people here and a lot of first-time chatters. I love to see that. So what we ended up doing in the first part was we based our design off of this stamp right here. I did a little bit of tweaking to change the colors on it so it would match the rooftops, but the design is loosely based off of this. If you kind of look at it, there's some elements to it that I made it my own. I generally will use a regional stamp as a reference, but that doesn't mean that you have to follow it exactly or replicate it perfectly. It's nice to throw in some of your own things, like this crow's nest on the top of the roof that you notice there's no crow's nest up here. Notice that on here there are these kind of pyramid roofs on the corners here. Notice that that's not on the regional map as well, the regional stamp as well, and that's okay. It's always nice to kind of throw in a little something of your own, and you can always add detail to make each make each part look a little bit more unique to it as well. You don't have to follow it exactly. All right, so we're going to start on our ground floor. This is exactly where your players are going to be coming into it, and coming into the tavern and the inn part. But so what I'll do is I'll remove this guide. I don't really need this image anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and hide that. And I want you to direct your attention over to the right layer panel real quick. Notice that I did do some off-screen changes. For instance, notice that there are 3 layers now that weren't in the first episode. I created a layer called floor. And the floor layer is important because everything that's going to go on your floor, and that includes your thresholds, your stairs, your fireplaces, or those things like that are always going to be on your floor. You would never make them in your wall layer. That layer above the floor is called walls. Notice that it's letting me select whatever wall elements I have. This is important because this way when you put a stamp on the floor, it's always going to be underneath the walls. It would be really weird if you had a fireplace that was on top of the walls, right? So just kind of keep that in mind, all right? Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a look, Conquest King. I don't mind at all. Thanks for mentioning it. Okay. All right. So just kind of keep that in mind that there are these two layers, your floor layer and your wall layer. Those are the two object layers. Now there is a layer in between, which is a brush layer. You can see that little brush icon right there. That's just to let you know what kind of layer it is. So I have the walls and floor object layers and a brush layer in between. That's called light and shadows. And there's a reason why it's in between the walls and the floor. It's because, one, I want the light and shadows to affect the floor, but I don't want my light and shadows to go above my walls, right? That would be weird if there was a shadow, unless there was some kind of indentation or a collapse in the wall. There's no reason to put a shadow on the wall itself unless it's some kind of partition in which it doesn't connect with the wall, the ceiling itself, right? So just kind of keep that in mind, that having these three layers is going to give you the freedom to select things without on the right floor, make sure there's the correct overlap, and you're going to be able to do your lights and shadows without accidentally bleeding onto either layer, okay? So kind of important to remember that. So what I'll do first is I'll create the exterior part. We left this part open right here for the exterior, and it's kind of nice to have a little exterior part. And because it's on the ground floor, that's more where you would expect to see that. And so we'll do this quickly. I'll show you a real cool trick that's going to allow you to quickly add this exterior part. We'll go over to the shape tool. I'm going to go select a stamp for my stroke, go into the catalog, search bar, type in grass. You'll notice there's this nice grass line right here. Don't worry about editing it or anything. Just make sure you select grass. Then you're going to drop down over to fill, click texture, open up that catalog, and then you're going to look for grass. And I already see it right here, tall grass. Why don't we just select that? Now here comes the part we're going to have to do some editing, because the grass line looks like it's got a little bit more yellow in it, while the tall grass is a little bit more closer to the green color. And so we have to make some adjustments. First, we'll just apply it onto the canvas so I can see what it looks like. This will make editing so much easier. I can start changing the scale, make the grass line kind of small. I can go ahead and change the hue of the grass to fit that green. And I'm also going to bring the brightness down as well, so it kind of matches until that grass line starts to blend and bleed into it. So there's that. And then the last part I'll do is I'll resize the scale of the texture itself. You notice how huge that grass is. So I'll go ahead and bring that scale down. And now I have this nice grass patch right here. I can put a nice little front lawn of some kind right in the front, and then I'll cut out a little path. So let's go ahead and use that. And what I'll do is I'll just start right here and go to right here. And now I have that nice piece right here. You can go further down if you want, maybe so that it lines up with that. Why don't we do that? I'll start here, go down, make sure that it lines up with this. There we go. Now I have a grass part. Here's the important part. You want to make sure that you go over to the shape tool. You're going to select the brush option. Bring the scale down. You can hold down the shift key and use your mouse scroll wheel to quickly scroll to change the size. That's going to be important. What's super important is two things. You want to make sure that the merge shapes toggle is on, otherwise it won't work. And you have to make sure that they're on the same sub layer, otherwise it won't affect it. So we're going to look at this layer right here. This is on layer 0. Perfect. So then when I go over to here and go to subtract mode, I'll go ahead and create a little route. And what I'll do is I'll start at the door like this. And instead of making a perfect straight line, I'll make this nice little curve. And remember, I have this ironclad rule about contrasts, right? Right now, you have a lot of 90-degree angles in here, right? That curve right there is going to break that, right? You're doing contrasts. And remember, as we go through each step in the method of putting this interior together, we're going to use contrast in every step so that way you create an eye-popping scene or encounter for your players. So we've created that little spot there. Why don't we also maybe throw in a well? That means infrastructure. A well would be classified as infrastructure. I'll go ahead and choose Core 2.0. I'll make sure to set the scale correctly. If you ever get confused about scale, you just go look at your stairs and your doorways. Those will give you a good sense of scale. This is about 6 feet wide here, probably 5 feet wide or so. I think that'll be just fine. I'm going to go ahead and place the well like maybe just right here, like this. And then I'll go ahead and create another little path, little branch off of the main route here, and have that just kind of branch out to there. So this time I'll bring the size down. It's not the main route that leads to the door. So why don't I bring the scale down a little bit, go to here like this, and I'll create a little path that goes around the well. And you know what? Don't make a perfect circle. Make it a little oblong a little bit. That'll actually make it look a little bit more interesting, right? If you just make it a little oblong like that. And let's also just kind of curve these corners a little bit so they're not perfectly straight. There we go. So we have some nice curves here. Same thing here. I'll even just like maybe break up that curve there. Then once you've done that, then you can paint a texture underneath of some kind. I'm probably just going to use dirt because I think that's the best choice. It would probably be dirt. I'm going to bring the scale down. Like with every texture, you always have to change the scale to somewhat match loosely to the scale of the stamps. That's not always the case, but it's a nice little rule of thumb to make sure there's not this really massive grass patch or dirt puddle that's just totally out of scale with the stamp. So just kind of keep that figure either in your head or write it down so that way you're trying to keep consistency with scale and stamp sizes. Next, I'm going to go ahead and bring the brightness down a little bit. And then I'll go to my background layer. It'll say right here, background. I'm just going to go ahead and paint in a little bit of dirt, just like this. And now you have a little route that kind of leads right into the door right here, which I think makes it look kind of nice. Go ahead and put that well there. That looks nice. And then what I'll also do next is I'll also go ahead and use what's called this dry dirt. And if people have any questions in the chat, I'll get to you at the end, by the way, too. I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you or not reading. I see what people are saying in the chat. So we'll make sure to address any questions that people have near the end there. I'll go ahead and use dry grass. Dry grass is a really nice texture to use because it's something that helps to kind of create this sense of use. You know, when people walk around, they track in dirt, they make a mess. There's usually like little scuff marks on the ground and stuff. This dry grass right here works great for that. So we'll make sure the scale is right, and it's a little too bright. See what happens if I put it on here? It just clashes with that dark brown so much, that dirt. So what I should end up doing is go over to the little tweak colors and bring the brightness down a little bit. Make sure that it's brighter than the dirt, but not too dark as well. So right about there, that's enough contrast. And I'll just go ahead and paint that on the ground like that. And what I'll also do is bring the opacity down and just paint a little bit inside as well. Where do you want to know where to put it? It's not hard. Just create a little path of where people would be walking, right? You would expect people to walk in through here and then to go into the kitchen. You would expect a little bit of dirt walking from the door over to the stairwell there, and maybe a little bit of dirt over by the fireplace as well to keep people warm. So something you would kind of expect. So we've got a little bit of dirt there. Why don't we, when you overall look at these grass pieces here, there seems to be some repetition in pattern because of the scale that we're using. So to break that up, we're going to use some stuff to kind of frame that grass section a little bit. Trees are always a great choice to frame in something. I'm going to go ahead and set it to close to about 100% or so, maybe 70 or so. You can make trees a little bit bigger. I mean, obviously, if you make them too big, you'll have leaves the size of your well. So just kind of make sure to keep that in mind. But I think when it comes to trees, there's a little bit of forgiveness about what scales you can work with, anywhere between probably like 50 and higher, because sometimes you just want a really big tree, right? So I'll go ahead and put like maybe a big tree like right here in the corner. That will hide that weird corner right there as well. That will hide that. That will look good. And then I'll bring the scale down a little bit and maybe put one like over here. Using a lot of the same stamps, so I'll make sure to change it up and use some different ones. Why don't we also use some bushes as well? Let's use these flower ones. I like those ones. Let's also make sure that these trees are up several layers. Usually, probably the tallest thing on this portion of the map, the exterior, is going to be those trees. So make sure those trees are at least several layers higher, so that way all the other stamps are beneath them. For instance, these bushes right here. And what I'll do is I'll kind of just maybe frame a little bit. It's okay to have a little bit of the straight line showing. I think that's okay. That will add a little bit of contrast. So what you should do is just place them in strategic locations like this, where you're still keeping some of that straight edge, but at the same time, you're breaking up that edge as well. So at least it frames nice and neatly that space right there. So that kind of helps. And then the last little thing that I'll kind of do to break up the kind of the I'm not sure how to describe this, kind of like just the pattern that exists in the grass here. I'm going to go ahead and steal something from the fantasy regional style, and I'll just type in grass. I'm going to use this same grass right here. You'll notice that there's a color differential here. So what we'll have to do is go ahead and maybe change the hue a little bit to get a little bit greener. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of place these facing outward like this on some locations like this. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of breaking up the pattern that exists in the line there, so that way it doesn't always just look like this same dark kind of grass edge right here with this crazy pattern. And so this little grass pieces right here will break that up, and it will make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll just kind of place them there. Remember that rule that I always have about create a larger stamp first, a medium-sized one, and then maybe a smaller one over here like this. And don't forget to kind of bunch them together so you get a more natural look to it. So now when I kind of look at the map, this grass line right here isn't kind of just really repetitive. It doesn't look weird. So kind of a helpful little trick there to kind of use. There you go. And so now we have this fairly nice exterior scene here. We could probably add just a couple more items, like a cart might be a good idea. We'll go back to Fantasy Battle Maps. We'll throw in maybe a cart with something in it. Could be cheeses. It could be sausages, Market 2.0. It could be this cart of potatoes. Why don't we do that? And we'll make sure our scale is right. A great way to set the scale would just be, look, what is the width of this road right here? So the cart's going to fit nice and neatly in there. So we'll put it right off to the side of the road, just like right here like this. It's a little bright for my taste, so let's go ahead and bring the brightness down. And now we have a little bit of details there in the yard. We'll add in one more detail. Why don't we just throw in a barrel and crates? Those are always excellent little detail choices. Good place to put them would just be like right here by the door. Let's have one facing on its head and then have another one on its side. And then maybe we can just like put that like right up against the wall right over here. And we'll stack them to where there's 3 of them. And then I'll also take the 2 bottom ones and bring the brightness down. Oopsie, this top one right here, I accidentally brought the brightness down. Bring that one up. There you go. And these 2 being darker, we'll use contrast to make them look like they are higher up and lower. So the top one is higher because it's brighter. The 2 below are darker, therefore lower. So nice little trick there. Okay, so now that we've kind of done that, I also might want to consider just bringing the scale down. Those are some rather large barrels, my mistake. There we go. I think that's about right. So I think overall this looks good. We could probably throw in some other details, but I think overall this creates a nice, aesthetically pleasing. It's got a road in which the players can follow. There's a well there if you want to have maybe someone fell down into the well. You can hear them calling out. So there's something that your players can kind of interact with in the first part when they show up, before they go into the interior there. So I think that looks nice. You know, the other details you could probably do is probably just put a bucket, because it is a well. And then maybe let's use this one right here. And I'll go ahead and just bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. So now you have that little extra detail. Why don't we put it over here like this? We're not able to do that, Ramosa, just so you know. Hey, I'm glad you made it, Kayfabe. I hope you were safe in traffic. Be careful. Some people can be cray-cray when they drive. You gotta be safe. All right. let's go into the inside, unless someone has some other suggestion for out here. I think we'll move into the interior because I think this right here has created enough to create some kind of narrative for your players, right? You have the bucket, the well. Those, if your players decide to go over to the well, or if they hear sounds over there, they can go and explore that. I think that's very helpful. So I don't think we need to really do much more out here outside of just little details like maybe adding in a pop of color like a red flower, those kind of things, but we can save that for later. Let's move into the interior because that alone just took 20 minutes. So we'll jump into here, and my approach to an interior is generally always the same. I'll walk into the room first. I'm going to go ahead and real quick add a threshold right here on my floor layer. There we go. This will separate the textures between the interior and the exterior. There we go. I got my threshold. And what I'll generally do when I first walk into a room is I'll pretend I'm one of my players. I'll walk in like this, and then I'll just walk around and just see what the space is. And then I'll immediately think about what the function of that room is, because the function is going to inform you of what needs to go into that room. You can, details aside, you always know how to add what decorations to an interior by its function, right? And the function of this room is the inn, because this part right here, or the tavern part, you can see there's this open space right here. This would be considered your dining space. Well, this part right here would be your kitchen with an exit or a staircase that leads down. I'll go ahead and move this real quick. That stair that leads down over to here into this basement. And we'll get to that as one of our last sections, but we'll go to here. So what I'll do is I'll start with always the largest stamp first. And the reason why I do this is because you need to know about your player's ability for movement. If you place the biggest stamps first, it's going to give you an idea for how much room your players actually have to maneuver around. You don't want your players bumping into tables everywhere. So I'll go ahead and start with Tavern 2.0 in the search in the catalog. This will kind of give me a lot of options to kind of work with, and I'll stick with the theme. And what I'll do first is I'll pick my tables, and I'll pick round tables instead of squares, because remember, we talked about this contrast. Right now, everything is 90-degree angles, these straight lines. What the circular tables will do is break up that and create contrast with those straight lines. So I think what we could do is, this is not a massive tavern and inn, it's quite small. If you notice, there's only 2 rooms. What I'm thinking is a hostel situation, and by that I mean a hostel where you stay. In other words, you'll probably have multiple people sleeping in each one of these rooms to maximize the amount of occupants and the kind of money these patrons can kind of make. So, and then we'll probably be able to fit about 3 tables and about 4 chairs per table, so that's about 12 people. So that's going to be your occupancy limit for your tavern, okay? And I'm going to look at my spaces. I think some obvious ones are going to be a corner right here, which I think will work well. And I'll probably put another one right here in this corner. It's a nice open space. And then I can probably fit another one right here as well by the fireplace. And lucky to whoever calls dibs or shotgun on that table there, because they're going to stay the warmest. So that will be nice. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that I'm got these stamps on my floor layer, not my walls. I'm going to bring the brightness down. They're a little bright, so it kind of makes them feel like they're really high up. I don't want to do that. I want them to be darker than my walls. My walls will be bright, so that way I've got contrast. So things closest to the floor, darker. Things higher up, a little bit brighter. So I'll go ahead and do the brightness about there. I think that looks good. I'm also going to adjust the shadow on this as well, so that way I can make them look like they're not just laying flat on the floor. Right now, they just look like they're discs on the floor, right? There's no shadows to make them pop out. But as soon as I start bumping up the shadows, bumping up the intensity of the shadows, that's when your tables start to look like they're more on legs above. Shadows are important to create depth, so kind of remember that when you're doing it. So we have these nice tables here. I think that's a good step. And before I move into the kitchen, we'll complete what's in here. Why don't we also add in maybe a piano? Now, you might have to change the scale on this. I don't want it to be, this is really quite huge, so I'm going to end up changing the scale on it. I think about that size looks fine. I'm going to put it right up against here. This way, there's some entertainment for the patrons, and it might create for an interesting story. Maybe you're going to meet a bard. who has a quest for you. So that will be kind of an important location within here. And I want to make it also close enough to the wall here and further away from this door so it doesn't impede movement to get into the kitchen. So I think that's a good slot right there. So now we have this nice piano. We can also kind of line it up a little bit with the table and the fireplace a little bit. I think that looks good. Okay, now that we have those elements, we can also now throw in our tables. And I think we can just use stools for that. I think stools are in the core. So we'll type in core 2.0. I believe they're in there. Yeah, here they are, stools. Make sure that you put them down a layer. What's higher, what's taller, a stool or a table? It's going to be it's going to be a table, right? So your stool is going to be below. I'm also going to maybe bring the scale up a little bit. Think about that size, looks good. Yep. And I'm also going to bring the brightness down like this. And then I'm just going to copy and paste them. And I'm going to put 4 per table because, remember, 12 is our occupancy for limit for here. So we'll do that. Put one in this nice shadowy corner. You can put a nice little NPC right there in that corner there. My other suggestion is that you rotate each one to where the grain is facing in different directions. This is a common mistake I see a lot among new map makers when they're using the tool is all the wood on all the objects are kind of facing in the same direction, the grain. If you're not sure what the grain means, that's the lines. You see the lines on these stools are all facing in the same direction because I copied and pasted it. To break that up, just rotate one, just a couple. You could use this to several degrees through each one, and that way you can kind of break up that grain. And then also I recommend changing the arrangement of the chairs. Don't have all of them nice and perfectly symmetrical lined up like this table right here. Have some of them be pushed out, like maybe someone got in an argument and pushed their chair out. Maybe a stool got pushed all the way under the table. It makes it look like it's missing. Maybe there's a stool over here because someone is sitting and trying to enjoy a pipe or something. Maybe that's meant to point out an NPC who's sitting solo that you're meant to meet, right? Again, contrast. If all the stools are in the exact same location symmetrically, then there's no contrast to say, oh, well, that stool, all the stools are the same. There's no difference going to any of these tables, right? So by creating contrast, you create interest for your players to look at things. So kind of important to remember that as well. All right, so I think what I'll do next is add in the last bit of details in here. And there's a couple things. Details should do 2 things. One, they should be talked about the function of the room, but details can also tell the story. So we'll start with the function part first. And I think the most obvious stuff is just to kind of use Tavern 2.0. And there should be some like eaten food here. So I think we should put unfinished dinner dishes. Let's go ahead and place those. I'm going to make sure to put them up a layer. They're above these tables right here. If you notice, if I scroll up, the tables are at 0. We're going to put these at 1. And I'll make sure it's set to that little random. And I'll just go ahead and place them on the table. There's also a couple other ones. I don't want to use that one. Let's use this one right here. I'll put a couple on this table. That makes sense. And then we'll also put maybe some alcohol on the table. So I'll put a couple of those, maybe one there, another one here. That looks good. And then I'll also do a couple other things here, like you're always going to have mugs, and put 2 kinds of mugs on your table. Some that has some beer in it, and then some that doesn't have any beer in it. Remember, contrast is important, right? It might tell a story, like somebody finished their beer first and left. So when you're interrogating this band of people that the townsfolk asked you to interrogate, you notice the mug is empty. Maybe one of those people are missing, are not there, they've skipped town. So again, contrast is going to be important. So I'll go ahead and kind of throw in the rest of my mugs here. These are a little on the big side. Why don't we, actually a big giant pint mug is nice. We'll keep that. We'll put another one right here like this. There we go. And I'll place a couple on this one as well. Don't forget to put those empty ones in. Put maybe one on a stool. I think that would be a good choice. And then also, this is where you come into your details part in storytelling. You could even put one on the ground that fell on the ground like this. Don't forget to put it a layer below the table. So just in case you want to put it under the table, it will interact with the table's shadow as well. By the way, Kayface, sorry to respond to this, but I'm glad that you made it safe. All right, that looks good. I'll also bring the brightness because, again, it's further down to the ground than the table itself, so it should not be at the same brightness. There we go. So our details are coming together. Let's add in some final details, like who is sitting at the table. The best way to show that is by adding people's effects. That could be things like staves, weapons, backpacks. All of those things can tell a story. So it might be a good idea is to maybe have something like a backpack. You would kind of expect to find like a backpack at one of the tables. So maybe put one like right here on top and then have it be high enough to where it's leaning up against the table there. That's a good step. We also could put things like, let's type in a wizard and then we'll look for some staves. Let me look for the right ones. Let me make sure that the staffs are 1.0 or 2.0. I think those are 2.0, so let's go ahead and use these ones. Maybe there's some kind of fey sorcerer that or sorceress or whatever that's at this table here. So let's go ahead and put maybe a staff on the table there. That's going to tell you who is the occupant at that table. Maybe we can also put like a hat on maybe one of the stools right here. That makes sense. It also adds a pop of color. That table pops out a lot more. Why don't we also add like maybe a map to a table? This way it will maybe suggest that there's people at this table are looking for something. This will allow your players to engage with the table. Maybe it's not important. Maybe it is. I try to put multiple things on each table to see which one your players will interact with. All right, so I think much of the details are here. The last couple things that we could do is probably add in your piano bench. And I do believe there are some tavern benches here. These would work great. Why don't we scale it down a little bit? That's a little too long for my taste. So why don't we go over to our transform? That's going to be this little icon here. I'm going to go ahead and just change the width so it's a little bit shorter. I'll bring it down a layer so it's below, and I'll also bring the brightness down. And then what I'll also do is to show use is I'll rotate the bench a little bit. And this will make it look like someone sat up. They moved the bench back when they got up, but they didn't push it back in to show this sense of use. And that sense of use is what kind of creates this immersion. When you see that there's been use, things like this dirt on the floor, these items on the table, this creates this sense of immersion when you add those kind of details. Okay, kind of important to remember that. I think for the most part, the last little details we might want to throw in here are going to be things like candles or light sources, unless you want to throw in, windows. But I think the first floor will be without windows so that way the heat from the fireplace will stay trapped. And that way the occupants on this floor will stay warm because that heat will rise and it will mostly heat up the rooms of the first floor and the roof, the attic space. So to keep the heat from escaping down in our base floor here, we're not going to add any windows whatsoever. So all of our lighting is going to be cast from our fireplace here, as well as our candles. And what I'll do is, because there's plenty of light right here, I'll put some candles in the furthest parts from the light source right here, so that way we can have a nice light source on each one of these tables here, so they pop out a little bit. And I'll also put one on top of the piano as well, so that way people can see what they're playing. And I'll also throw in maybe a book and some notes on the table as well. So maybe like I'll put some of these musical notes right here. I'll put them like just right on top of the table here. Let's bring the scale up so we have a little bit of a larger one. And then we'll put some other ones just right here on top of that bench. And I'll be sure to bring the brightness down. There we go. And so now we have some notes there. And we'll even maybe put one on the floor. I think that might be a last little choice. There we go. And I'll put it underneath the bench itself so that way there's overlap to create this sense of depth. Okay, so I think we've created lots of interesting points of interest for this floor so that we can go into the kitchen. One thing I noticed about the kitchen is that there is no fireplace for cooking unless they want to go out into the dining space and cook right off of here, which doesn't make much sense. We'll go ahead and copy and paste a fireplace. We'll put it right against this wall right here so that this way people can pull it right off of the fireplace mantle right here, and then right over to this table here where they can serve it and put it together. So we'll go ahead and put that there, and then I'll go back to walls, and I'll go ahead and just copy and paste these elements I did from the walls, rotate them, and now I have a fireplace, or not necessarily a fireplace, but some kind of way to cook food here. So now that's set up. Make sure that you're careful where you place it, because you still want room for players to reach this staircase that goes down into the cellar, right? That's why I'm putting it closer to the middle of the wall space instead of closer down here where it lines up with this, because again, you need to be able to access that space going down there. Access is going to be really important. So kind of keep that in mind. So remember, we're always going to use the largest stamps first when we go into a room. So why don't we start with like the main table in which the food will be prepared. We'll add that. And I think a good location for that can just be this right here, right against this wall. Right here, I'll make it fairly decent size. Make sure that I'm also set to my floor, by the way. There we go. This table right here, there's enough space, and it's fairly large. So you'll be able to prep food on this space right here. I'll even kind of rotate it a little bit, so maybe there's a little bit of use. That looks good. So now we go ahead and make sure that I walk through the threshold here. I have a table right here to prepare food. You just go right over here, grab the food that's on top over here, and then prep and prepare it, and then walk over here to put it either on the bar or to walk out the door through the threshold here and to carry out the food into the table of the occupants here. So we'll have all those important things. Now that we're kind of feeling that we're kind of running out of space, so we'll start going with medium-sized stamps. I think some obvious stuff is functionality, right? Right here we have this fireplace, so why don't we place some wood either right here or somewhere against this wall right here? Might not be a bad choice. That way you have firewood for this location right here, and it's not going to get in the way of that access point, and no one's going to trip over it. So we'll put it right there. That's a nice space to put it. We'll continue adding a couple more things in here that will look nice here. Maybe about something like maybe a barrel with water in it for washing dishes. So we can maybe take this. Let me just make sure, do we have any 2.0 ones? Market 2.0, we'll use these. I'll put like a bucket of water, like maybe right here. That way you can wash dishes. That looks good. I'll also throw in, let me type in Tavern 2.0. I do believe there is these big pots right here. So why don't we put like maybe a pot right here, and then maybe a smaller one just right on top right here like this. We'll bring the scale up a little bit. There we go. That looks good. Okay, got some details there. That looks good. All right, we're getting into the detail stage. Why don't we put some stuff on the table? We want to make sure that we show what the function of the table is. So why don't we throw some things like cut bread, where it looks like there's preparation for food preparation. So we'll add that, right? That makes sense. Since we have some bread there, how did the bread get cut? Why don't we throw in a bread knife? Kind of makes sense, right? We're following the rationale here, right? Why don't we also maybe put some food that is already prepared and ready to go? Why don't we go ahead and put that on the table? Maybe it's the last bit of elements are being prepared before they carry this out to there. So we'll put that in the corner there. I see some also, let's put in some more prepared food. So why don't we put in some carrots, cut carrots over there. Why don't we also maybe throw some other bread pieces, like maybe some bread over here. And where you see one, why don't we have two? So why don't we put a loaf or a slice of bread right over here? That looks good. So the details are kind of coming together on where things go. Why don't we also decorate the bar space? That's this right here. What about bar mugs? Why don't we place them just like right up against here like this? Right up against the bar. I'm going to place them a layer below so they interact with the shadow. And now there's this easy access to these mugs right here. And since there's some mugs up against the bar right there, it would make some sense to maybe put some of the mugs as well. And we can use the scale here and just place them right on top of here as well. Kind of makes sense. Maybe there's a section of empty mugs right here that get carried off for dishwashing. So we'll put that there. And then what about some mugs that already have beer in it waiting to be carried out? So we'll put a couple of those there, just like that. Why don't we also maybe throw in a candle? I'll copy and paste a candle here, so they're not working in the dark there. And I'll also throw a candle over here, so that they're not working in the dark. And that fireplace will be a major source of light there. Okay. I think for the most part, this has really kind of come together. Most of the stuff that I want is here. A dishwashing station, a place to prepare food. All the functional elements are there. You could add in some non-functional things, like maybe like a spill on the ground that represents an accident that took place. An explosion could be on the floor, or maybe it's just a kitchen and you don't need to put anything special in it at all. Maybe you're going to meet NPCs in here, all those kind of things. Let's also put in a bench. And I think I'll put, or not a bench, but a stool right here. This is kind of a place where the employee or whoever the patron is, or whoever is running this has a place to sit in during quiet times. You could also put it underneath here if you want to have them put it there, but I'll have some kind of stool for some kind of rest. I think that looks good. All right, yeah, I think overall this looks right. Okay, and we'll do lighting last. So we'll go and move on to our next spot. I think all of this looks pretty good so far. I like the way that it turned out. Everything's coming together well. So I think what we'll do is we'll move up to the next floor, and I'll show you just how that works too. Your players are going to walk along the path here, and they're going to go up these stairs right here, and then they're going to end up right here on this space where they're going to walk up, and they're going to notice some options here. They can walk straight down the hall to go up to where the people who run the establishment, they live on the top floor, allowing the people who are going to be staying at the inn to have to do less walking up the stairs. So they've created these rooms up here. There are 2 rooms. They're fairly decent size rooms. And what we'll end up doing is we're going to do a hostel setup where there's going to be like maybe a queen size bed and then maybe some singles as well in each room, so that way you can fit the most amount of occupants in here. So we'll end up doing that. So what I'll end up doing, like I did before, is you always start with your largest stamps first. If you want, you could throw down some windows, but because windows are kind of in the category of light and shadow, I'll save that to the end. In fact, I think I'll just add windows. Yeah, I'll add windows later. Let's go ahead and start with the largest stamps first. Those are going to be your beds, right? So I'll make sure to use 2.0, and I'll make sure to start with the queen size beds first. Couple setups, a way that you can set this up. You can set it up like this to where that way the people can reach both sides. So maybe there's a couple that lives or staying the night here. They'll be able to stay in here, and there's room on both sides. If you want, you can save a little bit of room and just put it up against the wall like this, where both the people who are going to sleep in that bed are going to have to squeeze in over each other to get to the other side. So that's really up to you how you want to approach it. If you want extra room, then I would do this. If you want it to be more cozy, I would set it up like that. And then also I would put in my single as well. And you can put it maybe like right here where the fireplace or where the chimney part is, because that way you can stay nice and warm. And I'll put it just like this. You'll notice that when players walk through this little narrow hallway here, they'll have room to walk around. So I've got this here. They're not going to bump into anything. When they walk over to here, they're going to have space to walk to investigate the bed. So know that those spaces are there. Then I'm also going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go ahead and figure out a location for my bed. I'll probably put maybe like another bed right here, so that way it's close to the fireplace to keep warm. And then maybe I can put a couple singles in here. Like maybe I can put one right here and maybe another one right here like this. And that way you can get even more occupants, because this is a fairly decent sized room. After you've set up your beds, and now you have established some space, maybe rotate them just a little bit, make it look like use. So I'll rotate them so they're not perfectly flush with the wall to create this illusion of use. After you do that, you're going to go ahead and put in your next size stamps. I would probably say your dressers are probably going to be your next choice. Remember, you always think about functionality first, and then you can put in your details later. So notice that I have these dressers right here. Good place to put dressers. I could put one flush up against kitty cornered against this wall right here. This is a decent space right here. And it also breaks up these 90-degree angles and creates a diagonal. So that's going to be nice. And there's still room and space. Maybe it blocks a little bit of this space right here, but at least it fits in there. That could be the dresser for that couple there. And then you could scale down and create a smaller dresser for this occupant right here. And we can just squeeze it in right there. So now we have two dressers. You could move it down to here as well. Remember, you could always decide your decoration. You could move it like this, and now you still have plenty of room now for your dresser. So it's up to you. There are a lot of choices. So up to you. I personally kind of like the kitty corner setup myself because everything is flush against the wall. And I understand but not necessarily kitty corner. This is flushed against the wall, but I like that diagonal, and I think that looks nice. So I think I'll just put that there. I think that looks nice. There we go. Same thing. I'm going to go into here and copy and paste. Good place for the dresser would be like right here up against the wall. That way there's tons of space. That way the dresser doors can be opened without hitting anything. That makes sense. And then I can go ahead and put maybe a double dresser, another bigger one right here instead of two smaller ones. And then that way, these occupants here have these two dressers right here. I might want to consider like maybe moving this a little bit this way so that way when they get out of bed, they're not whacking up against it. So I can move those a little bit. That sounds good. And notice that there's tons of walking space now for players to move around. And that will look nice. On here, what I'll do is there are some big stamps we have to put in. What's always nice is to put in rugs. And the same concept, remember we talked about contrast here. We used circular tables to break up all these 90-degree angles, 180s that we had here. And so to fix that, we're going to do the same thing up here. Instead of tables, we're going to use rugs. Rugs there's these curved green rugs. These are going to work perfect. And we're going to go ahead and use these. So, and you're going to make sure to put them down several layers. And you're also going to make them a little bit darker to denote that they're on the ground. So I'll put a nice circular one here. It's okay if some of the cabinet is on it and if some of I think that's going to look nice. It's also going to create this sense of overlap. So that will look good. And then we'll also put like maybe a longer, like a runner right here, like this. And I'll kind of place it like right here like this, and I'll rotate it a little bit like that as well. There you go. Thanks for sharing the profile, by the way. Appreciate you doing that. Thank you, Becca. So now, and then also we've noticed that I'm using red and green, which I believe are complementary colors. So this kind of reddish color complements this green, so that will come out kind of a Christmassy color. But green and red, they complement each other. So it's a good choice. Just always think about kind of that when you're putting together your choices about your color palette. Just look up complementary colors or triadic colors, whatever you want, and then just kind of that way you can kind of make sure that there is some kind of continuity in your color. It doesn't mean that you have to, but your composition will do better when you think about color composition. It doesn't mean that you won't have a good composition if you don't, but it can do a lot to your map when you're being conscious about color. If you don't know much about it, then just look up simple color theory. It's not as complex as you think, trust me. All right, so I think overall we got all the major large stamps. So I think we'll go into the smaller details, but we'll stick with function, and then we'll go into that second part, which is details. Again, going to tell us more about the occupants, maybe something that took place within each room. All of those things are going to be playing a role here. So we'll start with that, and I'll start with my first room. You walk up the stairs, go into the first room. I always try to put myself in my player's shoes so that I know what they're seeing when they're walking. So they walk in here, and a couple things that we can put in here. One, we can establish light sources. We can put food. Maybe the occupants decided to skip food downstairs, and so instead they have like maybe their mugs and stuff on top of their dresser. Like this, they decided to maybe party upstairs instead. So we'll maybe put a couple maybe mugs, lie them around a little bit. That will be nice. A couple other things we can do is tell us about the occupants that live there. So maybe an instrument might not be a bad idea, like maybe a guitar. Why don't we take a guitar right here and just go and put it on the table? And I'll kind of set it up to where it's kind of lining up with the creases. Notice the crease, the the drum of the guitar fits right into that crease, and so does the stock. That's going to be where the head of the guitar is. Notice that the folds in here kind of fit nice and neatly into the folds there. So we'll put that guitar just nice and neatly right where those folds are. That will fit in very nicely. So now that kind of gives us an idea of who is staying on that bed right there. It's probably a bard, a musician of some kind. That gives us an idea of who the occupants are, right? And in fact, why don't we say it's maybe a traveling troupe who has rented the entire room, all the beds. So why don't we also just type in instrument? I'll just type in instra and it should push in all of them. Oh, I see musical. Why don't we type that? Musical. Here we go. Let me get the 2.0 guitar or the violin. That's a little on the big side, I'd say. Why don't we? That's definitely too big. Why don't we scale it down a little bit? And then why don't we put a violin, maybe instead of putting it on the bed, so that we have a little bit of contrast, we'll put it right here on top of this cabinet. And I'm also going to rotate it to where it's offset a little bit, kind of dangling over a little bit off the edge, hanging over the edge there. I think that's a nice little touch. Breaks up those 90 and 80 degree angles, so that'll be nice. We'll also throw in our light source. Just go ahead. I think good places for light sources are going to be like on your dressers, or if you have end tables for your beds. I don't see a lot of room for an end table. Let me see. Do we have end tables here? We don't. Let's go ahead and use this one then. See, there's not much room for end tables on these beds right here, but there is room for an end table here. So why don't we put that end table right there like that? That's a good location for it. I'll also change the grain and I'll rotate it a little bit to make it look like it's been used. Bring the brightness down a little bit. And then I'll also I'll shift my candle over to right there. And that way we have a nice light source right there on that end table. And I'll also maybe put like a mug right there as well. That'll be a nice little touch. And because this is kind of now that we've kind of established the occupants of the room, that's going to inform us what details to put in the room. Like maybe we want to steal some of the notes right here from downstairs, move them to here, and then we maybe can put some notes on the floor. That kind of makes sense. We'll put one maybe right here. Maybe they're writing maybe there's a little quest in here where you'll have to help them write the most incredible song for I don't know, maybe a performance for the nobility in this village, town, or whatever it might be. So you have to help them write the perfect, a somewhat more pacifist quest instead of completely destroying an enemy, even though it's chef's kiss to take on enemies and bad guys. But sometimes it's fun just to have a quest. It's just fun and pacifist, help out some traveling bards coming up with the ultimate song. That's a nice little fun little side quest there. All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll add in some final kind of details in here. Like I think some obvious things are like bags. Like how do these? Where are these people's backpacks? Where's their stuff? So we'll put like maybe a backpack there, and then maybe a backpack up against the wall right here. That kind of makes sense. If you want to show there's different classes of people, you could use these different types of ones right here: a spellcaster, a fighter, a survival backpack. But I think I'm just going to use these regular ones because they're bards. So I'll just kind of place those there, and I'll put one on top of the dresser right here as well. This way we kind of have the details that we need. I'm also going to rotate this angle this way. There we go. Okay, I think we've added quite a few details in here, and this looks good. I think we'll get to the adding windows and light and shadow stuff. Why don't we go ahead and move from this room? We'll go ahead and walk around to see what players have seen. We'll probably add in a couple things in here, like maybe some of that dry grass, just to kind of create this sense of use. Remember, we did that before, so I'll put that in there. That should put a little bit of artifacts on the ground instead of just this flat, just this kind of flat grain that exists. So that grass right there will kind of break that up, kind of create this hallway right here. It might be fun to put something in the hallway. You have this nice space right here, so why don't we maybe put an end table, and then maybe we could put something on the end table. that would maybe tell like a story. Maybe there's like a little statue of some kind. Maybe that's going to give us like, maybe it's a cursed statue. Who knows, right? We can put something on the end table that's going to ask some questions to make it look more interesting. I like this kind of like demon statue that kind of like asks some interesting questions. So why don't we go ahead and just put that there? So you have this kind of a little statue on an end table right here. I think that's a nice choice. There we go. Now that hallway isn't completely useless outside of just the functional. They'll have something interesting at the end of it. That looks good. And then we'll make our way into here. And so now we need to define who is staying inside of this room right here. And what we could do is just like before, why don't we use the bags, the backpacks, to kind of denote that? Like we'll have like, maybe there's an adventurer party in here. We've got maybe the cleric that sleeps right here on this table right here. I'll make sure to bring that down a layer. And then maybe the naughty bard and barbarian are having a nice little affair. So we'll put them in the same bed together. Put the barbarian bag there, and then I'll put maybe, let's see here, the spellcaster. Let's do the spellcaster. I'll put that. Let's go put that maybe against on the bed itself. That would be kind of fun. Like maybe someone's putting something together. Okay, this looks good. All right. All right. Is my audio working? I notice that I see the bit rate has gone down a little bit. Can anyone confirm and let me know? Was there a little blip in the broadcast? Just go let me know in that chat. Make sure everything's working. I want to make sure. I've seen a quiet chat, so I didn't know if something went wrong or not. Just let me know. Hey, first time chatter. Oh, it dropped but reloaded. Great. Okay, cool. I'm glad it's still going. Sorry that happened to you. Hey, first time chatter. Glad that you're here. Awesome. It is working. Great. It was a couple minutes ago, but it came back really quickly. Okay. I'll make sure to go through then edit that part out there. Okay, so things are working. Okay, good. Cool. I'm glad it's back. Sweet. Just keep me posted in the chat if things happen like that, all right? Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. And thanks for your patience. All right, let's keep going. So we've kind of established a little bit of the occupants of the room now. That will help us kind of decide now the details that are going to be in this room. So we could start with maybe like putting some weapons in the room, since we know we have a barbarian there. So maybe like a battle axe would kind of make sense. Maybe the barbarian is a dwarf. So why don't we maybe put like a dwarven axe on the bed? And why don't we set it up in a way where it kind of lines up with the folds of the bed? Notice how the handle goes right there on the fold of the bed. I am alive. Okay, yeah, I think that looks good there. It follows into the folds. This right here folds, goes right into the folds a little bit, right there like that. I think that looks good overall. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. Let's pick those light sources. Let's put one maybe on top of this dresser right here. Why don't we also put an end table? Since we have room for one, why don't we put an end table right here? That looks good. And then why don't we put maybe the backpack on that end table right there? That way, that looks good. Okay, end table, backpack, that looks good. That looks good. We got a weapon there. I see this is like a alchemist or a spellcaster's backpack. Why don't we add some potions then? That kind of makes the most sense. And we don't have any, do we have 2.0? Nope, not out yet. So why don't we use maybe these ones right here? We'll put a couple on the floor like this, and I'll make sure that one's under the table as well, so that way it shows this sense of depth. So we've got some potions for that spellcaster. You might also expect maybe like a staff or a wand. Why don't we use a 2.0 staff? Yeah, let's go use one of those. That looks better. Why don't we use this one right here? Green, again, is complementary. So what I'll do is I'll just place that right across the bed like that. So that green emerald on that staff goes very well with that red. So that works. So you're starting to see all the details are kind of coming together about where everything is going to be. Interior decorating is not so complex when you have that method. You start with the largest stamps first, so you can determine proper movement and space for your players. It's called your radius of movement. And then you then start adding in the details or the stamps by its function of each room. Once you've established the function and add the functional details, then you can start adding in the storytelling details, which is where we're at right now, with adding in the staff, figuring out the occupants of the room. That's going to be really important when you're doing interiors, is those two things. One, telling the story about your occupants, and two, you're going to want to talk about the functionality of the room, and the stamps are going to help to determine that. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I think overall this looks pretty good. There's probably some final details we can throw into that room. Like I think like a book would kind of make sense. Like maybe someone's reading a book and we can kind of use some of these newer stamps here. There's nothing on this bed yet, so it looks a little weird. So why don't we throw a little book on here? I'll bring the brightness down a hair. There we go. And now we kind of have all the details. So your players are going to, after investigating this room, doing whatever they're doing, they're going to go up, then up here, and they're going to move their way upstairs to the next floor, which is going to be that attic space A-frame. And I established that A-frame by using these pillars right here. You see these pillars right here? These represent holding up the ridge, or where the A-frame connects at the top, where the A part is at the top. So those are the beams that are holding up the A-frame. So they are going to be getting in the way of player movement, but at the same time, if you have any combat that takes place up here, these pillars right here, these beams holding up the roof part, will work great for dodging. Maybe someone casts a spell and it hits the beam instead, or maybe the spell blasts the beam, causing slivers to cut into whoever you're fighting there. So there's all kinds of fun things that you can kind of add in there. Restricting a little bit of movement allows for cover. So it was a nice piece there. And again, this room is technically, its function is a larger bedroom. It takes up the entire space. And this is going to be where the people who own the tavern and inn. And what we'll do first, as always, is we've already established what it is we'll put the largest stamp in first, which makes most sense. And I think a bed is probably going to be the best choice. And I'll put it right here so that way it's not getting too much in the way. So here it is right here in the corner. There's a beam right here, but at least it allows people to walk in behind that way and to walk in this way. And then also maybe they have children, whatever age they might be, it doesn't matter. Maybe they have 2 children. So why don't we put in 2 beds right up against the wall right here like this. And then that way we have them, because they're probably going to need help, right? There's probably some farming going on the outside. So they're going to need help. So either they're going to hire hands to help around the facility, around the bar and the tavern, or they're going to have children who they're going to help. They're going to end up helping them around. So we'll put in these 2 beds in here. There's still tons of space here, which is what you would expect. The next step too is we want to keep using big stamps. Why don't we also create like a place for them to eat? It makes sense to maybe grab one of these tables. Again, we'll follow that rule of contrast, and maybe we'll put like a dining room table. Or maybe I'll bring the scale down a little bit and put it in this corner, because there's plenty of room, or you could put it close to the fire. The chimney right here, if you want to stay warm. I think just to create more room, I want to create this inner part of the room right here. I want to make it open so that people can walk around and that combat can take place here. So I'll go ahead and put that there. And then I'll also grab a stool from the ground floor as well. And since it could be 3 or 4 people, so we'll go ahead and throw in, oops, no problem here. What we're going to do is we're going to let it auto save here. Save manually. After it's done saving, we're just going to refresh the page. This usually happens when you work on a map and you've been working on it for a while, and then you don't end up saving and refreshing. This is kind of what happens. It's not really a big deal. It's also really, really hot in the office right now where I'm at. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel save. I did 15 changes. I'm just going to go ahead and just refresh it. So I'm going to reload. It could have logged me out, which sometimes happens. I don't know if that ever happens to you where it logs you out. Oh, it went down. Okay. So maybe it could have been a Cloudflare. It's probably a Cloudflare issue, but I don't know for sure. Don't quote me on that, but we were having some experiences earlier, so it could be the case. We're going to wait a moment. I'm going to go ahead and see if this will let me log in. It does look like it is down. Oh, okay. we're going to go ahead and open up. Here we go. Go back to videos, log in. We'll see if this works. Yep, it might not be loading, and that's okay. What we'll end up doing is we'll probably have to finish this another time if it doesn't load. So, but I think it does look like there might be an issue. I'll just go ahead and check here. No, things seem to be okay on the dev console, so I'm not sure. That's okay. All right. Well, I think we'll have to go ahead and complete this another time. We'll have to cut it short. Sorry about that. Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties there. What we'll end up doing is we'll just complete this part. We'll complete the rest of it in another stream this week. So either it'll be tomorrow or it'll be Thursday, because we're already going to have streams on Wednesday and Friday. So it'll be another stream stack a week, probably. Sorry about that. I was really enjoying doing these interiors, so we'll just have to do it another time. Sorry about that, everyone. Appreciate your patience with me on this one. We'll go ahead and continue this later this week. I'll make sure to post that, okay? Because I think the site might be down for a little bit. Sorry about that, everyone. Let's go ahead and meet up later this week, all right? Thanks, everyone. Please take care, all right? I'll talk to you later. Bye. So let's just move right over into the next floor, which is where the owners live. And as per usual, as I mentioned, you always place your largest stamps first. This gives you a sense of how much room that you have. You should always start with your largest stamps first. And as according to order of operations, it's also just to place the largest stamps first. It'll take up the most room, and then you'll slowly start from largest stamp to smallest stamp. So I think maybe just the bed, as always, is usually generally the largest stamp that you're going to have in a residential residence. In a room like that, I think it's going to make sense. I also want to maybe put, maybe they have family members that live here. So I think what we should do is maybe the couple lives there in this bed. That's where they stay. And then we'll also have other beds over here. Maybe this could be the family members that help keep the business going. So I'll put a couple of those in. So I think here, this is at 23. We'll put one bed right here, which I think is a good choice. It just fits nice and neatly right here. And then I'll copy and paste and maybe put another bed right here like this. And this is also going to be nice. It's going to take up lots of room. That should be helpful. So now we have all the beds on this side over here. I think that looks nice. And then we'll go ahead and start putting some other objects. After you put in the bed, the next largest things are going to be things like maybe an armoire, a desk, dressers. Any of those things are going to be good choices. Why don't we create all the basic infrastructure part? If you're ever curious on how to put together an interior, if you're confused on it, you should start with the functional elements first, like beds, dressers, and then you can start adding your fantastical elements later. So if you start with functional first, then it's easier to add in the small details which give us the story. So I think maybe we're going to put one large dresser right here like this, and that's going to represent the dresser that belongs to the couple there. And then we'll put a smaller dresser right here in between the two beds, and this dresser will be shared among the two children, and I don't know what their ages might be. You could have one be very young and very old. It's the details that would tell that story. Like maybe we could put some toys on one of the beds and then maybe a book on the other bed to kind of show the age differential between these occupants. That would be a good choice. After you've added in your dressers, because this is a tavern and an inn, maybe they need a desk of some kind to keep track of the finances, people who are staying the night, all that kind of stuff. So why don't we throw in some kind of desk? That's going to make a lot of sense. Because it's a small tavern and inn, it doesn't need to be this very expensive desk. So why don't we type in table instead and see if we can find a little bit more of a rustic table. Let's do this this long table 2.0. It's a bit big. If you look at the size of this table, it's huge. So why don't we bring the size down? And then we'll also put it in a location that's going to be convenient. For starters, we could put it right here like this. And then, but that looks like that kind of gets in the way of the swing of the door there. So let's move it over to here somewhere instead. We'll bring the scale up. I'm just going to put it just right against here. And one thing I also noticed that I kind of made a mistake is I put these on the walls layer, and I kind of want to move these to the floor. So I'm going to go back to I'm going to select all of those. I'm going to click this little yellow button here. I'm going to go to move to layer and just go to floor, and then I'll switch back to floor. And there's a reason why you want to do this. It's because you always want your walls to be higher up than whatever's on your floor. That kind of makes sense. And if you make the mistake of accidentally putting the stamps on the wrong layer, no big deal. Select those objects, then click the hamburger menu here, and then just move to layer. It's a quick, easy way. This way you don't have to select everything, copy, paste, delete, move to the other layer, and then control paste or anything like that. So it might be easier to just use that feature instead. So we got that desk here. I think that's a good choice. Why don't we also put like a chair of some kind? Oop, not share, a chair. Oop, for some reason, I keep hitting the wrong letter there. A chair here. Let's also make sure it's 2.0. Core 2.0. Let's use this. What's higher up? The chair or the desk? It's going to be the desk, of course. We'll bring that scale up. This should be at closer to 23. There we go. Bring the desk up a little bit bigger. There we go. And to show a sense of use, I'll kind of rotate the chair a little bit and maybe rotate the desk a little bit just to kind of show a sense of use. Let's maybe put this up against here. You could even what's called kitty cornering. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that. If you've done interior decor before, kitty cornering is basically where you take whatever object that you want, whether it's furniture, and you just place it up like this to create an angle. So you can also do a kitty corner here if you feel that looks nicer. If you prefer not to do that, you can put it against here. I think kitty cornering here will be nice because we have a lot of 180s and 90-degree angles in our wood and stuff. And so just like you have the grain in this diagonal, why don't we also throw a dresser in the diagonal? And that will also kind of break up those 180s and 90s. Remember, I say this throughout every video that I do. Always think about contrast. That's going to be two things contrasting against each other. You have these 280 and 90-degree angles against this diagonal angle. That's going to create contrast. That's why the flooring, the grain of the wood, is jarring against all the 180s and 90s. It creates contrast. This is something you always want to consider in every step in the map making process, because if you're thinking about contrast in every step, you're going to create an eye-popping map for your players. So kind of remember that. And you're going to use contrast for every step. It doesn't matter what it is. I think that looks good. There's room for some other things in here. And I think for starters, we might want to consider also adding like maybe a table of some kind for them to eat. Maybe they want to eat privately instead of eating downstairs where the inn part is. So what might be a good idea is to maybe throw in some kind of circular table. And I'm going to use circular for a particular reason because, again, we have a lot of straight lines, even the diagonals. This circular table is going to break up all of the rectangles and square shapes by creating some curve into the composition. So now we have this nice circular table right here, and we're going to place it in a location where it's not going to take up too much room. Like we could move the desk over to here like this if you want, or we could move the table up against here. Maybe you want to stay warm when you're trying to eat. So why don't we maybe put the table here, and then the fire, the heat that's rising up from the chimney is keeping the upper floor heated. So we'll maybe put a table here so that way they can eat and not be freezing cold. I'll also maybe grab a couple stools, and that way I can go ahead and place these a layer below. Since there are 4 occupants, we'll put in 4 stools. I'm also going to maybe make these stools a little bit darker. I'm going to use contrast again to make things seem like there's some kind of depth. So I'll just bring the brightness up a little bit. There we go. So now we have that. I'm also going to, don't forget, look carefully at the grain of the wood. Notice how I don't want the grain to all be facing in the same direction, so I'll rotate a couple. I'm going to place one maybe all the way underneath the table, one far off from the table, maybe one that's just a little bit under the table, something like this. And then that will kind of create this sense of use, which is a nice choice. And you want to think about traffic. So if I look carefully at this, there's still plenty of walking room for people to move around. If you look carefully, you can walk here, you can reach everything without any problem here. So I think this is a good choice here. So now we have plenty of walking room. Some other things we might want to consider is maybe throwing in a bookshelf. You know, just think about all of the normal things that you have in your own bedroom. And then those things you can probably apply to whatever fantasy bedroom, obviously just from a fantasy setting. So I think maybe a good location for some books would just really be right here, like this. So we have some books. I think that's a good choice. And then what we'll also do is I'll throw down some rugs. You notice here that we put down some rugs in here. And we could probably just use the same color rugs. It's not a big deal. I'll just copy and paste and put some rugs here. I think I'm going to make sure, I believe, let me just double check. Did the floor pieces, these pieces right here, let's go ahead and select these and bring these down a couple layers. These want to go down. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the rug and run it against this side right here. I'll make it a little uneven. I'm not going to make it perfectly symmetrical, so I'll move it a little bit this way, and I'll even rotate it a little bit that way just to break it up. And then maybe we can put a circular one, like maybe just right here like this, right where that dresser is. I think that's a good choice. And I'll make sure that it's underneath some of the dresser and some of the desk. I think that will be a good choice. So the setup is looking pretty good so far. Once you've kind of added all the stamps, the larger functional elements, this can help to inform you what kind of details to add. For instance, if this is a bookshelf, you might expect maybe a book on the floor, right? Because you have a bookshelf. Maybe we want to put a book on top of the bookshelf itself. Maybe we want to put a book on the ground. Let's go ahead and make sure that we have the right ones. Market 2.0 book. Let's put that on the ground. Just like this. I'm also going to add some shadows here. Why don't we add shadows to all of these? I'm just going to do it now just because I'm just going to be picky. Normally I would do the shadows last, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. Custom object shadow. Here we go. And for now, I would just do create the ambient occlusion of your shadows. And we'll go in more into detail about how to do shadow work. But for now, just the ambient occlusion part. Ambient occlusion is just that light shadow that helps to make the object pop out. If you want to do cast shadows, we'll address that later by adding in light sources. But for right now, I think this is a good step right here. So at least the stamps are popping out. Remember, if you add a little bit of an object shadow to a stamp, it will pop out. Look carefully when I turn the shadow off on here. If I go to none, notice how this becomes a little bit more flat. And then when I turn the shadow back on, you notice that it causes it to pop out. So a cool little trick. If you want depth, add an object shadow. You can use it to create directional shadows as well, but I usually will just use those shadows for your ambient occlusion, and then I will paint in the directional shadows once we've established light sources. The ambient occlusion part is just to make sure that the floor, to make sure that the stamp looks like it's not just lying flat on the floor. There's sense of depth or height to it. So always throw in just a little bit of shadows there. All right. I think so far we've added details there. Let's put something on the table. You want to, again, identify that this is a eating table, so it might be a good idea to throw in some food. In fact, I'll do food 2.0. I'd like to use 2.0 stamps as much as possible, making sure that I'm not using anything that's out. Let's put a unfinished dinner dishes here. Let's put a couple here. Oops, wrong layer. Let's go up. Let's do another one here. Oops. Again, went to the negative. My mistake there. Here we go. And of course, we're going to want to maybe put in some utensils. Oops. Nope. Let's go ahead and put in spoon. I think both spoon and forks will show up. We don't need to put fancy like golden forks. Remember, this is a relatively humble, a small kind of hole in the wall tavern and inn. So don't worry about trying to put super really ritzy utensils and stuff. Just kind of put down just your regular wooden utensils for now. I think that's just a good place to start. There we go. So you have some utensils there. We're also going to throw in a light source. I'll put in a candle and put one lit so that way it can warm up the room. We'll also put another candle on this table right here. We need to have lighting for the owner of the facility, the location, the tavern, to be able to see what they're doing. We can maybe put an open book is a good start. This could be like maybe the inn patron list, the people who are staying, the names in the lists. It could be that thing. We also maybe want to throw down a key, right? Some keys. Every single, they're going to have access to every single room. So we're going to put some keys on that desk. That's going to make some sense. Why don't we also put maybe some coin, right? This is where they're counting some coins. We'll put a bag of coins on the table there. And in fact, why don't we also put some coins on the table? Why don't we rescale this, bring the size down a little bit. There we go. We'll put a couple on the table. We'll also put a couple on the ground like this, maybe even one underneath the table. And to show that height difference, I'll bring the brightness down. There we go. And now we have some coins on the ground as well as on the table, as you would expect. Remember, if you ever get confused on what details to add, just focus on what the function of each furniture is, right? Because this is, again, the owner's desk. What would be on the owner's desk, right? The book, the keys, the coins. It could be notes, quill, and inkwell. All of those things would be required for something to have a desk, right? So all of those things are going to be important. We're going to just make our rounds all the way around the room. We'll start in a counterclockwise. We started with the bookshelf. We went to here. We went to here. We also want to put some stuff on top of the dresser. It's going to make a lot of sense. So why don't we kind of rotate this kitty corner this a little bit more. I'm also just going to maybe move the desk over a little bit more this way because I'm noticing the swing of this dresser right here will hit against this desk right here. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I'll go ahead and move my desk just a little bit. And that should help to kind of fix that issue there. That looks good. Things to put on dressers, not complex. Just what do you normally put on your dresser? It might be a cup or a mug of something that you were drinking. It might be where you place some of your books. Maybe you have some scrolls on there. Maybe where you keep your instrument. It's just whatever kind of things that you might find there. I think some good choices would be like maybe an unlit candle would be a good choice. So maybe we can grab a candle and just put it on the corner here. We could also put in things like maybe there's some clothes that are lying around. We could go type in clothes and kind of check. We have these artisan fabrics. That might look good. Why don't we place some of those artisan fabrics just right on top of that table as well, as you would expect? Why don't we also put maybe a bench of some kind on the end of the bed right here? Because the bench is maybe the location where the people who sleep in the bed, they sit down, they put their boots on, they get themselves ready in the morning. Sometimes when you're putting on shoes, you don't stand and put your shoes on, right? You sit down, you put your shoes on. So why don't we create all of those functional things? Let's type in bench. Oopsie. Let's go ahead and let me just see if I can find the Tavern 2.0. That's perfect. This one will work well. I'm going to go ahead and place that there. It's a little long, so we'll go to our transform adjustments here. Adjust that. It's a little bright, so it looks like it's higher up than the bed. So if I bring the brightness down, it will look like it's a little bit lower. And I'll rotate it like this, and then put it a little bit in the bed shadow, so that way the bed shadow affects it. And then we mentioned boots. So why don't we add in a couple boots? Let me make sure that I have the right stuff here. Here's armor boot. Why don't we use these old ones for now? And I'll just go ahead and place a couple boots, maybe one on the bench itself and then one off the bench on the rug. And I'll go ahead and move that rug down a layer. There we go. That makes sense. And then I'll bring the brightness down. There we go. So now we have a little bit of action going on here with that, which makes the most amount of sense. Why don't we go move to the details of the bed? I like the idea of the clothes. So why don't we maybe take like, let me see here. Let me go and expand all assets here. There we go. And I think what I'll do is maybe take the dress here and maybe lay that out on the bed. I think that would be a good choice. And I don't want to add the same kind of details that I did in the other room here. Like I put all kinds of stuff like the patrons' equipment and all their stuff on the beds. I don't want to do that exact same thing, so I'll do something a little bit different. I'll throw in maybe some clothing just to kind of show that these people live here. right? To show that they live here, they're not staying here temporarily. So to show it's a little bit more lived, I'll kind of create a little bit more of a mess. Why don't we also take, I think I saw a clothes pile right here. That looks good. Let's go ahead and use that. Let's see here, right here, clothes pile. And I'll go ahead and put that underneath the bed itself. Bring the scale down and just kind of put it right there like that. Bring the brightness down right underneath the bed there. Same thing with this dress right here. I'll kind of just place that. In fact, I'll try to look for a good location for it. I usually like to look at the creases in the comforter on the bed and just look for a good location to place it. I think right about there looks good. It goes well with the creases. I think that looks right. We can also throw in some other details. We'll move over to this side here. Why don't we, again, maybe add in some toys to show that someone is younger. Just want to make sure, okay, that's 2.0 stuff. Let's go ahead and put maybe a toy on the ground. Oopsie, wrong layer there. And I'll make sure to click that. Let's put another toy on the bed here. Let's maybe put a ball on top of this dresser. We'll put maybe a headless doll, like on the bed itself, and then the head can be on the floor, like this. That can tell a little bit of an environmental storytelling, right? Let's go ahead and bring that brightness down. There we go. Same thing with this one. I'll go ahead and put this underneath the bed to show that sense of height differential. Remember, we want to show that the bed is higher up. So putting something underneath a stamp, that creates overlap, allowing it to look a little bit more like there's a little bit more depth here. So let's go and place that here. Go ahead and put the head on the floor. We can even make it a little bit smaller, not too much. There we go. That looks good. That looks good. So we have a child in that bed, and then we'll maybe put some books on the other one. Let's go ahead and use a different color this time. Let's see here. I don't want to use red because that won't pop against here. Let me just scroll through what looks best. I think this one right here looks good. It has it's kind of bright. It contrasts against like that. That looks good. And then we'll also maybe throw in some of this paper here. And I'll put, this is pretty usual me. I always like to add like just some random notes lying around. So I'll put maybe a couple on the bed here, and then we'll put a couple underneath the bed on the floor like this. I don't know why I'm obsessed with doing this, but I just am. There we go. Okay. Hey, first time training Pyromaniac. Hey, awesome. So glad that you started that promo trial today. I hope you're having fun. I'm sure your drawings are more than chicken scratch. They're better than you think, I'm sure. All right, let's go ahead and add that. Let's do this here. I'm also going to create like a sense of a trail like this and create some curvature. You notice that when I place to these stamps, notice that it kind of creates this curve like this, kind of creates a path. That's kind of important when you're placing your details, especially when it's a lot of the same details, these pieces of paper. It creates this curve-like path. Always super important to kind of keep things like that in mind. I might want to consider maybe adding just a couple more details. I think like an end table right where the family lives on the corner there. Let me see if I can find, let me expand this real quick, expand all assets. Can't remember if I can find that small table. Oh, here it is right here. It's called a bedside table. I'm going to scale it up, and then I have this decent size end table right here. I kind of like the stools better because it's circular. So what I'll do is I'll turn this stool into a circular bedside table, make it a little bit bigger so we'll show that. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll put like maybe a candle or something, a lit candle just right there in that corner. And that should add a nice little light source right there. That looks good. Okay, we'll take a step back and look at it. I think overall this looks good. Let me just take a step back. I always like to take a step back and look at it. Okay. Why would a young kid rip the head off their toy? I have no idea. It asks a question, doesn't it? Right? That's what's so cool about storytelling, right? Why would the kid do that? It's like, maybe it wasn't the kid who did it. Huh, interesting, right? Always good to throw little details. They kind of tell stories. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Why would that young kid do that, right? When you're putting down stamps and doing your environmental details like this, putting things in a weird way like this allows the players to ask questions. And that's such a good thing, right? You want your players to be curious about things. You want them to ask questions, just like Max did here just a few moments ago. That's excellent. I love that. So that means we're on the right track, kind of doing that, by doing that. So that's excellent. And then what we'll do next is we'll go ahead and maybe just paint a little bit of action on our floor. So what I end up generally doing is I'll go over to my dry grass texture right here like this. I'll make sure the scale is correct. Bring the scale down just a little bit. And then we'll set to our background layer. I'll just paint a little bit of this dirt on the ground like this. There we go. And now you have this sense of movement, right? You would expect some dirt being tracked in just a little bit. It's just meant to break up the monotony of just this perfect floor pattern that you have on the ground, right? There's going to be staining. There's going to be skid marks, scuffs. All of these things are going to happen on your floor. So this dry grass kind of adds these elements, breaking up the flatness of your floor when it's just one texture or two textures. So this dry grass adds that sense of use to your floor. So I think that's a good choice there. Why don't we also do the last two? I also remember that I wanted to maybe add in an access to get up to the roof somehow. So I'll look carefully here. What I'll end up doing is I'll go ahead and maybe move this piece over to here on this side, and I'll create an access point in this corner here. So I'll go ahead and place this right here like this. Maybe I can place it just like this, just to create a little bit of room. That way I have access. And then I'll create a little ladder that right here, and that will lead up to this point of access here on the roof. So I think that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and choose a ladder. Make sure I got the right one. That's a width. Let's use this one. Doesn't have to be a fancy ladder. Let me just make sure I got the scale right. It's about the right size there. And I'll just go ahead and place that ladder just right there, just like that. And it kind of goes up. Now, if you want to show one cool little trick that you can do is you can add like a light source right at the bottom of the ladder there. And what that will do is it will make it look like there's light coming down from the next floor. So we'll put lots of windows in this crow's nest like element of the roof, so that way it explains why there's light filtering down. So I'll put a light source. I'm going to go up all the way up to layer 10 and put the light source just right about here. I think looks good because the light would come down and it would also cover some of the ladder as well as some of the floor. So this light right here will make it clear that this kind of leads up to that next floor that leads to right here. And so what I'll end up doing is I'll do a couple things here. We could have it to where the crow's nest, you can see the interior of the crow's nest. It could be so small that you don't even need to show the interior of the crow's nest at all. You could just have it to where if you're using a VTT, they technically would just teleport to the dock, maybe some kind of scaffolding or dock that comes out of here. So why don't we create that? Let me just check real quick. We'll go to the line tool. We're going to type in dock or wood of some kind. It doesn't really matter which one you want to choose. I think this desert wood roof is a good choice. I think it looks kind of nice. I'll just go ahead and place it down like this. It's probably going to be a little on the big side. Let me just make sure, where are we at here? There we go. Bring that scale down. That looks right. I'll go ahead and bring the brightness down a little bit. That looks a little better. And I'll go ahead and bring that right there. And then I'll move this up a layer. Ooh, is this not going up the right layer? Oh, layer 10. There we go. We'll go up. There we go. Okay. So you'll have this access point. You'll go up. And then here's this kind of scaffolding or wooden plank that's kind of propped up on the roof. Maybe there's some kind of quest or something that has to be fetched at the top there. You could put maybe like a bird's nest up on the top of the tower here. All these different things that you can do. But I think just a little wooden plank here is a good location here. I think also I kind of lost where the fireplace is. I'll copy and paste this. And I'll also place that there as well. There we go. Copy, paste. That should go right there. Let me take a step back and just verify that. There we go. That looks good. Actually, you know what? I can undo that real quick. Let's keep that part. There we go. That looks good. And then I think the fireplace will go right about, or chimney will go right about here. That looks good. Okay. And then I'll also add in a couple window elements as well, or a dormer. Just type in window. Oopsie, let's go to roof instead. Roof. Here we go. Let's see here. Which ones am I looking at? These ones right here. And you're going to look for, let me see if I can find it correctly. I believe it's, where's the right one? Oh, there it is right here. So this is going to be a dormer right here, and I'll show you how to work these to where they don't look like they're just really flat, because if you look carefully at these, they look really, really flat on the roof. How do you make them look like they're kind of popping out? Because when you look at a dormer, you notice that there's kind of an A-frame or a gable, what's called a gable. Let me draw that real quick so you can see it. I'm going to draw this real quick. What that dormer is going to look like in a side view is going to look something like this. Oopsie, let me go ahead and draw that. It's going to look something like this. Okay, that's what this point right here is, the ridge. Let me go to undo here. This right here is called the ridge of the dormer. Here's the ridge right here. And you would expect a little bit of like shadow work here to make sure that this kind of pops out. So a really cool trick that you can do to make these pop out, especially make them pop out this side, because at an angle, what the dormer looks like is this, just to be clear. It looks something like this. Here's the pitch of the roof, and the dormer comes out like that. And then this is where the ridge is right here. So to show that, we want to add shadow right here to make it look like that dormer is popping out on the roof. So the way that we fix that is pretty easy stuff. We're going to use object shadows to do that. So I'll select one. I'm going to go to custom object shadow. I'm just going to set it to 0 for now. Just go to 0, 0. Let's bring the shadow blur, the intensity up a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and change the vertical to where the shadow is just right in front, just like this. And now when you look at it, you can see now that dormer pops out because you've used that shadow to create a sense of depth. So we're going to do the same thing on this one. And the shadow should be in the front part of the dormer where the gable is. Okay, well, I drew that little diagram there on the side there. So we'll do that same thing. I'll go back, custom object shadow. Go ahead and set all the offsets to 0. Bring the intensity and the shadow a little up, and then bring the vertical up a little bit again. And then there you have your other shadow on that side. So those gables really, really pop out when you do it that way. We might want to even consider making some smaller ones on this one. So maybe we'll put a gable there and a gable there, and I'll copy and paste and create another one like this. Copy and paste and put another one, and then I'll adjust the shadows on those as well. So I'll take this one, adjust my shadow, go to 0, horizontal offset, go that way. This one, exact same concept, go back to 0, horizontal offset that way. And then look at those dormers. They just pop right out. So very, very helpful, because I find that roofs are quite complex. They can be difficult to put together in my mind. So this method should make it a little bit easier for you to put those together. Why don't we line up another dormer right here with the chimney itself? Why don't we push that dormer a little bit more this way? We'll line it up with some of the tile there. Push this one this way. There we go. Make sure I line these up properly. That looks good. Okay. All right, that looks good. Excellent. Okay. And now we have a little bit of roof access here. That's kind of fun to play with there. And then we can also put some things on the roof itself, like maybe we can put a crate, a barrel, a chest, whatever it might be that's important to the players. I think a chest is a good idea. Why don't we put like maybe some kind of locked chest? I'll make sure that I got my scale right. I believe 23 was the interior stamp. So I'll put a chest up here, right there. And what I'll also do is, instead of lining it up perfectly like this, I will do a little bit of a diagonal, and that will make that pop out. Why don't we add some details? Maybe a bird's nest is a good choice. Why don't we type in nest? That's a whip, so let's use this one. So a good place to put this would be like right where a dormer connects against the roof right here. So right in this little corner right here, you can put a little bird's nest here. We'll go ahead and bring that brightness down a little bit so it's not so bright. So you have a nice little bird's nest just right there. That's a good choice. That looks good. Okay. Yeah, I like the way that that turned out. This looks pretty nice. The other details you could do is throw on some greenery. What's always nice to add, which I feel is always a nice touch, is some vines growing on the map itself. Always a good detail to it. So why don't we go back to the line tool? We're going to type in vine. Now you could use vine stamps and just individually piece them together. I've done that too. Or you can just use the line tool. So I'll go ahead and use those. Just make sure my sublayer is somewhat correct. I think it's somewhere around 6 or so. Great locations for vines are going to be like on your corners. Like I'll put a corner right here like this. We'll bring the scale down so it fits. There's a good location. Another one is on the ridges of your pyramid roof. This right here is a pyramid roof where that crow's nest is. So I'll create a little bit of one like this. Make sure I have it set to the right layer. Has to probably go up a couple. That looks good. Do it again. Put one right here like this. Right along those ridges is always a good choice. There we go. That looks good. We can also put some along this ridge right here. My suggestion is to not have them be perfect straight lines. Break them up into little segments like this. Maybe put them along the ridge of this dormer right here. Always a good choice. Right along the dormer there. Copy and paste. Maybe you can put it right along this chimney right here. Always a good choice. So putting a little bit of greenery on your roof is a great way to give it this more natural like feel to it, which I think is always a nice touch. So I'll just kind of single click and create some just random little vine pieces here. Let me see if I can open this up, and then maybe I can put some vines below. Let me go up a layer. Let me see, is that going to go up? No, it doesn't look like that wants to go up. Where is this? Let me open this up here. Shape. Okay, get this tool here. Paste this line. Wonder why it's not working on its on the right sub layer here. Yeah, see, that's bizarre. Probably have to save and refresh the page. But for now, we'll just call it good. I think overall this looks good. There's tons of more details that we can add to this, but I think you're getting the general concept. All of these things are really helpful to make your roof a little bit more interesting. Always love me a good roof battle. So that last room down here is going to be that cellar. And the access to that is right here from the kitchen, which makes the most sense, right? The kitchen is going to need access to casks of wine or beer. They're going to need to access where the food is stored, maybe wheels of cheese or whatever it might be, maybe in the buttery where there's some butter. Who knows, right? So you got to have storage for whatever it is that you're going to be saving for the kitchen there. So what we should do is go in and start with putting some basic stuff down. I think what I might want to consider doing is I wanted to show maybe like a flooded section to where maybe some of the wall collapsed because maybe there was an underground aquifer. They built it too close to the aquifer, not knowing that it was there. And so the water eventually eroded the walls and flooded the cellar. And I think a flooded cellar is also just a really nice theme. So I'm going to throw that in there. What I'll do first is I think I'll try to break up some of the wall just to show that there was some kind of collapse a little bit. A good choice is to go into the catalog and type in rubble. And there should be these kind of broken kind of rubble pieces right here. They're called rubble ends or these rubble chunks. I think these are going to work really, really well. This will kind of show collapse. What I want to do is I'm going to desaturate it, bring the brightness up and contrast a little bit just to kind of make sure that it matches. Now here's the cool trick. Once you've assigned where it is, now you're going to use contrast to make it look like there is a hole there. So I'll bring that brightness down, and I'll notice carefully as I'm bringing the brightness down, it's causing the wall to look like there's a break in the wall, because again, I'm using the trick of contrast to allow this illusion of a break in the wall. So I should choose where that break in the wall is going to be. I think I'll put it on this side, and that way the water is spilling from the corner here. So I'll go ahead and put that there. That looks good. And what I'll end up doing now is I'll start putting in some water. So what I should do is I don't want it to be like blue water. It should be more green, some kind of algae-like color because it's in a cellar. Maybe it's still water, whatever it might be. So maybe I should choose maybe a different color, maybe go with this blue. And then what I'll end up doing is changing the U to maybe fit a little bit more green into it. I'll desaturate it a little bit to give it a little bit more of a murky kind of feel to it. That looks good. And then what I'll use is I'm going to use my cloudy brush, bring the opacity down a little bit. Let's go to about 24, go to background. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint a little bit of water on the floor like this, just kind of spilling out from here. So let's go ahead and paint. Maybe it kind of went into here a little bit. Paint a little bit here. We're going to paint in this way. I'm just going to paint just a bunch of water, kind of just spilling its way into the cellar. There we go. That looks good. That looks good. Lots of water. That looks good. Paint in some here. Why don't we also just paint a very thin layer of blue? Why don't we bring the opacity down and paint a very low, there we go, about 19%. There we go. So it looks like water is kind of slowly moving its way in. So this corner right here is where the most amount of water is. I think that's a good choice. It could be submerged. We could also have it to where maybe there's some logs or something that's trying to hold it in place. There's all these different things that we can do. Why don't we also go back into rubble? What about some of the wall that collapsed? We want to show that. So we'll go back to background. We'll go to floor, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and put this right there on the floor like that. This is going to be submerged underwater, so I'll go ahead and turn the shadow off. None, and then change the blend mode to luminosity. Now it will make it look like it's underwater. Now it sticks out a little bit, so we might want to do a couple things. A good choice is to, one, you can always drop the contrast down and then bring the brightness down a little bit. And then now you have this nice setup here. Why don't we scale this up a little bit? And then what I'll end up doing here is I'll probably widen it or thin it a little bit this way. And then I can go ahead and scale it. And then I can put the collapsed part of the wall right here, just like that. There we go. That looks excellent. So now we have some water flooding in. In fact, what I might want to consider doing is maybe having this entire section right here will be completely filled with water. And then maybe we can put in something kind of interesting here. Why don't we just fill this section in right here with as much water as possible? I really want to get a little bit of water in here. I really want to show sections that are fully submerged underwater. And I don't mean up to the ceiling of the cellar. I mean like maybe up to your knee or up to your hips, anything like that. Your waist level might be a good idea. This is also going to create kind of a sense of a challenge for your players. Water is harder to move around and do actions. When it's deeper, when it's shallower, it's a little bit easier. So you're going to some mobility and some action restraints happen with this higher water. So I want to show that the water is higher up. And to show that, I can use something like maybe a barrel. And a barrel is pretty decent size, right? To just show that the water is deep, I'll use a barrel and use the exact same concept. Luminosity blend mode, bring that contrast and that brightness down. And then what this will do is it will help to determine that this is actually a very, very deep section. So this is very helpful to kind of give you a sense of depth because you don't know how deep the water is. Is it knee level? Is it ankle level? By throwing in a barrel like this, it makes it very clear that the water is actually fairly deep, right? It's making it clear. It is conveying to the players the depth of the water. That way it makes it clear. Then I can go in and just put maybe another barrel that's floating above the water while another barrel is below, is in the water itself. So great little tricks that we can kind of do there. Why don't we remove the brightness and the contrast? Let's bring the brightness down a little bit. And then what you can also do, I'll go to 23 here. What I can do is maybe put a crate to show that it's above. I can also overlap like this. In fact, I don't think I'll use a barrel for the overlap. What I'll end up doing instead, make it blurry. Absolutely, you can do that too. Great choice. Maybe to show that it's further down, you would add more blur. To show that the water is not too far down, add less blur. So we'll add maybe just a hair bit of blur. And this is another great choice, by the way, Maple. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Blur is a great way to denote depth and to use that contrast rule, right? We're trying to do this step of having things being above and below the water. That itself is contrast. But adding a blur creates one stamp that's blurred and one's in focus. Again, that applies to our big ironclad contrast rule. So that's a great suggestion. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm just going to put it ever so lightly because remember, this is not a super deep. It's not like 20 feet deep, 100 feet deep. So to show that, I'll just make sure there's enough blur to show that there's somewhat a bit of a depth there. And that will kind of set that straight. So I think overall that looks good. So we have one underwater, one above the water. We can start also by maybe putting a couple more barrels and crates. Why don't we put a couple like this, stack them. Remember that trick about height? We can make the ones below a little bit darker, while the one on top will be a little bit brighter to create this sense of depth. What else would you expect in a cellar? You're going to have things like crates, barrels, all of those things. So let's maybe throw in a couple crates here. Maybe I'll put a couple crates up against here. Don't forget to kitty corner. Put a couple crates right here. Don't forget to do different size crates. All of your crates are not going to be the exact same size. So scale some of them down a little bit, and that will really help to make a little bit more reality. You would not expect crates to all be exactly the exact same size. They're going to vary in their sizes. And to show that they're maybe a little bit smaller and a little bit lower to the ground, I'll bring the brightness on those down like this. These are also maybe a little too bright. We are in a cellar, so I'll bring the brightness down just a hair. Let's bring this metal crate size down a little bit. So we have some varying sizes. That looks good. So lots of stuff going on in here. So that looks good. We'll put something in the cellar part too as well. I think we want to maybe create some tables or benches that are up against the wall. So to put stuff on, I think that would be a good choice. Why don't we actually use the benches that we used earlier? I'm not sure. Is there a bench for the line tool? Let me check. There is a bench. Let me make sure. Tavern 2.0, perfect. And what we'll do is this bench is going to go up against the wall like this. Perfect. I'll go ahead and I'm going to desaturate a little bit and bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go, just to make it look a little bit more rustic. And then you have this nice bench or thing up against the wall here that's going to act as a place to put stuff. So let's do that. Let's also do another one like this. An L shape might be a good choice. There we go. So we have this nice L shape table right here. That looks good. Remember, don't put it up against where the door is right here. So they walk in and they have all this stuff that they can put on here. Let's also do the same thing here. We'll put another one right here. A little bench. So, or not a bench, but a kind of a work table or a place to put shelves or something like that. That looks good. Speaking of shelving, why don't we also type in shelves? That makes sense. Why don't we pick one that has stuff on it? So that way it looks like there's storage there. Why don't we use Tavern 2.0? I believe 23 was the right size. That has a lot of food on it. Let's choose this one right here. That looks good. Let's remove that. We'll place one there. Why don't we also move this one over here and we'll place that just right here in that corner there. That looks good. We'll place another one right here like that and another one right here like that. There we go. So now you have plenty of storage stuff as you would expect. That looks good. Okay. Got our rubble. Sweet. All right, so this section is coming together really well. Hey, first time chatter. You know what would be a cool idea for a video? All right, tell me how to make character stat cards like they have in Critical Role. They're so neat. That's an interesting idea. I'll have to put that down. That might be a masterclass session since that goes a little outside of map making. But I think in a masterclass, because I have made those before using the tool. So it is absolutely possible. I'll definitely write that down. Thanks for mentioning it, first time chatter. By the way, appreciate it. TJ Skids, appreciate. Okay. So far, so good. I'm overall liking the way that this looks. I think I want to add a couple more details and things. Like maybe I want to add in more rubble stuff just to kind of show there's been some more collapse. Like I think these wood pieces right here would work really, really well. I'll place them like on the water like this, like they're floating on the water. And then I'll put a couple underwater as well. Let's not use that one, not that one. This one right here. Let's bring the scale down. So I'll place a couple of these underwater would be a good choice like this. Not that one. The one that are underwater, let's go ahead and use these. No shadow, blend mode luminosity. And then I'll go ahead and bring the contrast and brightness down. There you go. Now we have these. So let's do some cool tricks. Let's do some cool tricks on things that are above the water. You want it to make it look like it's not just sitting on the water, right? There's some transition between the item that's floating on the water and the water itself. And so my suggestion would be to use things like object shadows to do that. So why don't we kind of remove that one? Why don't we cluster these two closer together? That looks good. We'll take these objects that are on the water, and I'm going to go change my shadow for them to white. I'll extend, bring the... Did I not select this one? Oops. Normal. Let's go to shadow, custom object shadow. And by throwing on this kind of white shadow, it kind of looks like it's interacting with the water itself instead of just sitting there. So by adding a little bit of white like this, it kind of helps to make it look like it's kind of floating. So that's kind of a nice choice there. These are a little on the bright side. So why don't we bring the brightness down? That looks good. And in fact, shadows are a little heavy. So why don't I bring the intensity down just a hair? There we go. That looks a little bit better. Now you have that kind of floating there. Some good choices. I think that looks good. And you know what we'll also do is I'm going to also paint a little bit of water to make it look like people have walked and kind of created a little bit of water on the floor as they come up, just so it'll give a hint to your players like, hey, something happened down in the basement. So I'll paint a little bit of water like this, just right here by the base, right here. And then that water will implicate like, hey, there's something going on in the basement. So you go down the stairs and then into here in this first room, there's a little bit of water in the first room. And then when you go into this next room, it's quite flooded quite a bit. And then we could do a couple things here just to wrap this up. Why don't we also throw in maybe some other water effects to kind of make the water pop out a little bit more. We could use this right here. I think it's called, let me see if I can find it. Where is it? This right here. It's called water waves. We could use that one or this water reflections. Now, I would only use this unless there's some kind of light source in here. So what I think we'll do is we will throw in a light source because these are reflections. So I'll bring the texture scale down a little bit, and I'll also bring the opacity down, and just right wherever you see where the water connects with the thing, I'll just paint a little bit just like this, just up against this edge here. See how I'm painting a little bit of that right next to where the floating thing is, a little bit here. There we go. And that will help the transition a little bit more of that stamp with that. So that helps to pop out a little bit. Now I'm going to take a look at these real quick to see if there's any candles on here. I do see some candles on these. I'm just trying to check where my light sources are. I see some candles here. Not all of them are lit. Let me just double check. Are any of these lit? No, they all seem to be unlit. Let me just double check. No, that's unlit and that's unlit. Okay, good. Okay. All right, we'll go put that in that corner there. So far, so good. Move this here. You know what also might be some good ideas is to maybe put some barrels facing the other way. That means they're upright on their face. So I think like this kind of a barrel right here. Let's put a couple of those in here as well, just to make sure that they're around the same size. I'll scale this up. It fits about the same width. Go ahead and bring that brightness down, and then I'll just go ahead and move that right in these corners right here. So I kind of have a little bit of a barrel right here. In that corner, I'll copy and paste. Maybe we can put another barrel in this corner right here. That looks good. Why don't we remove some of the stuff in here to create a little bit more negative space for players to move around. There we go. That looks good. All right, so that water looks good. We have a nice little location. Where are we at for time? 56. Great. We're in that last step where we do that lighting part, because I think we've added all the details we want in here. For now, we could maybe address more later, but I think overall that looks good. So let's just take a step back. I always like to take a step back after every step to make sure that it looks good. Okay, so now the next step is the lighting part. And I usually, what I'll do is I'll start with just like the first floor. Now, when it comes to the exterior, it's not complex unless it's nighttime, and then you might have multiple light sources like campfires, moonlight, torches, stuff like that. I think what I'll do is I'll have this just be in the middle of the day. So what I'll end up doing is just add a light source. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a nice, giant, big light source, layer +10, and just place it right on the outside, just like this. And what this will do is it's going to start to create a little bit of contrast. The interior is going to be a little bit darker from the exterior, so that way there's a little bit of contrast, right? So you have this nice, bright light right here on the outside. You don't have any lights on the inside yet, so it helps to create some contrast. Why don't we also take some of these lights and maybe put them on top of the treetops, because the light is going to be hitting the treetops as you would expect. So we'll take some of these treetop lights. I'll go ahead and bring maybe the opacity down just a little bit. There we go. And already the light is causing the outside to pop out. Remember, light sources do so much. And in reality, in real life, light and shadow is what gives things its 3-dimension. So if you want to create 3-dimension on your map, the best way to do that is to apply light and shadow. Without light and shadow, you're not going to have 3 dimensions, or at least the illusion of it on your map. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now that I've kind of established my light source, and because it's just facing straight down, this would technically be about noon. And I don't have to worry about doing any crazy cast shadows. But what I should do to be sure is to make sure that every stamp that's here does have some kind of ambient occlusion. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and choose only stamps. If you select all, it will unselect all, then select stamps. And then what I'll do is I'll just go across just like this. I'm also going to make sure that light source is locked. By the way, I'm going to lock that. That way I don't accidentally select the light source. I'm going to select every single stamp. Go to shadow, custom object shadow. In fact, I'm going to undo that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the shadows for these grass pieces, by the way. Let's select all from this set, lock all that grass. I don't want to select that. There we go. And then all those light sources should also be locked, because we don't need to add a shadow to those, or a shadow to those. There we go. Everything should be selected. Object, do the shadow here. We'll bring that intensity up. There we go. Want to make sure there's a noticeable shadow to the stamps to make them pop out. There we go. And then when you take a look, now those stamps really pop out. So now the sense of depth is there. Because remember, object shadows, ambient occlusion, great way to make your stamps pop out. If you're not comfortable with doing cast shadows yet, ambient occlusion, just make your light source or your time of day be noon. That makes it nice and easy. And from here, we don't have to do a whole lot of shadowing, because it's noon, the light is just straight down. The ambient occlusion is enough. Once we move into the next floor, this is where the interior, this is where things are a little bit different. Some things that we should do is add in windows. I didn't add any windows in the beginning. I wanted to wait until later. So what we should do is type in windows. Here we go, 2.0 window. Good locations for windows on the floors are pretty simple. You want maybe some natural lighting for your kitchen. So go ahead and put a window just right where your preparation table is in the kitchen. That's a great location for it. Another good location for a window could be right here, this section right here. It could be, another one could be right here. I think what I'll do is I'll just do one window right here for natural lighting in here, and then the rest of the lighting will be done by candles, excuse me, and the lights from the fireplaces and all that stuff. So I think that will do well. And so I'll also grab the basics. Remember what we should do? We should do that ambient occlusion thing. So let's go ahead and make sure that I'm only selecting stamps here. So I'll select all the stamps. And I'll go ahead and make sure that I have my custom object shadow. Let's go ahead and bring the intensity up a little bit. There we go. Make sure I really get the intensity up on these. Make sure that these objects are really popping. There we go. That looks good. Oopsie, I'm only doing the wall stuff. My mistake. Undo. Let's go to floor. There we go. My mistake. There we go. That should work. Grab all that stuff. Go to custom object shadow. There we go. I want to make sure these stamps pop out, so I'll bring the intensity up. There we go. Now those stamps begin to pop out a little bit more, as you can see. There we go. That looks good. I don't need to add a lot of ambient occlusion to the pieces of paper. They're paper thin, so you don't need to have a thick ambient occlusion. And just a kind of reminder, if you have a tall or a larger object that can cast a shadow, you want your ambient occlusion to be thicker. If it's something like paper or a rug, something really thin, you don't need to add an object shadow or any ambient occlusion at all, because it's just not high enough to cast any kind of shadow, unless it's maybe folded or bent in some way and it casts a little bit of a shadow. It doesn't mean that in real life rugs don't cast a shadow. They do, but when it comes to Inkarnate, you do not have to add shadows to your rugs. And in fact, when I do, it looks a little weird when I add them. I usually don't add any shadows to my rugs. I'm sure a lot of you here who are frequent users they do the same. You probably don't put your rugs with a shadow. I think it doesn't really look good personally. Okay, why don't we keep going? I know we're over our time. We got over an hour, but I don't think that's a big deal. So we're going to do that light part. And what I'll end up doing is I'm going to go to my light and shadows. In the first episode, I created a brush layer in between walls and the floor. And the reason why is because I don't want my shadows to hide the walls. I only want the shadows to hide whatever's on my floor, while the walls remain untouched. So this is going to be important. Kind of remember that, all right? So I'll go ahead, and what I'm going to end up doing is pick the color black or whatever color you want. I'm going to put the opacity at about 35. Don't be shy about making it dark. It's okay. So I'll go across like this and just put apply. And you notice how it's going to be nice and dark in there. See how it's nice and dark in there? That's great. You can make it even darker than that if you want. You can always just do apply again and make it even darker. I think this actually right here is just fine, that first initial darkness. Let me go to undo again real quick. Let's do one back. There we go. That looks good. And what I would do here is I'm going to place my light stamps next. And to create some really nice lighting, I'll show you a good trick. Take a orange light and put it directly on the light source itself, and make sure it's a little bit smaller. So I'll go ahead and place a nice little orange light on top of each one of these. Here's a little an orange one, not the yellow one, an orange one. Same thing here. I'm going to go ahead and put an orange light right there like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and take a yellow light, put that up to layer +10, and I'm going to go ahead and place a bigger light source just right there like that on top. Put up a bigger one right here. There's also a light source here, and right there. That looks good. And also your front door would also have a little bit of light coming from underneath where the threshold is. So I take this half circle light source right here, go down a layer and just place it right there like that. Let's go ahead and put another one on just like this. And what that will do is it will create this illusion that there's a light source coming from underneath that door. So I think that's a nice choice. Once you've done that, go back to light and shadows, go select erase, grab your brush. Let's go ahead and make sure I have this default brush, bring the size up, and then just start erasing, as you would expect, right where your light sources are. So I'll go ahead and erase. And remember, the most erased sections are going to be wherever your light source is. So right where the candle is, that's where you're going to put the most erased section. Same thing here. Let's go ahead and erase a little bit here to create some lighting. And then I'll erase a bunch right there. Same thing here, a little bit here. And then a couple clicks, get that popping out. Same thing. Oh, I forgot the fireplace right there. Thank you for mentioning it. Appreciate that, Max Severus. Good catch. Let's go put that there. In fact, I'll go ahead and just use these same light sources here to do that. Copy and paste, rotate them this way, and put them up against here. Great. All right, and then I'll go ahead and go back, and I'll just go ahead and erase these sections. And then now that we've established light sources, we can start doing our shadow bits. So I'll go ahead and paint this in, get this nice big, because this is a fireplace. Expect a lot of light here. Same thing here. I'm really going to erase a lot here to get this to pop out. That looks good. So the lighting looks good. Let's also paint a little bit here and against here. I want to get some lighting up against here. And so it really starts to pop out now, right? You can see the lighting. It's very warm. It's very inviting. It's a very nice feel to it. Then we're going to take that same light and shadow, and this time we're going to go back to our black color. And now that you've established where your light sources are, it's going to be a lot easier to paint the shadows. Now, if you're not very good at figuring out how to put your shadows in, you can just use the line tool to create these guides, little guidelines. So I'll show you how I kind of do that. In other words, I'm going to have like a line to show that the light is going like this. So I'm going to use these guidelines, and what these guidelines will do will help to determine in which direction shadows are going. So I'll go back to my shadow. Let's go to brush size like this. The first one is light is coming from here. Why don't we paint a little bit of shadow, as you would expect, right along here where it's casting that pot. What about inside of the pot, right? The light is shining over. So what we want to do is go ahead and paint in the interior of the pot with a little bit of shadow as well. Let's paint a little bit darker and then paint a darker part right here like this. Same thing here. The light source is right there. So let's go ahead and paint in that light source. Don't forget to make sure to paint on on the actual pot itself, the object itself, because if it's just the shadow cast, you would also expect the light to be hitting the back part or not and casting a shadow onto the pot itself. Same thing here. The light is going against here. So I'll go ahead and paint a couple shadows along here to make sure that those shadows are being cast. That also looks good. Also, you see that there are a light stamp right here. So I'll create a little bit of shadow here, a little shadow there, some shadow here, along here, here, all where that light source is. You're going to have shadows being cast. Same thing here. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow cast right here. That looks good. Same thing here. This looks good. Why don't we have a light source here. Let's create a little bit of a shadow right here, 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 and here. Light facing this way, shadow here, here, and here. Light going down, hitting against this. Why don't we create some shadows in the cups? There we go. That will help to make those cups look a little bit deeper. Makes it pop out a little bit more. I think the shadow is a little thick on this one. So what I'll end up doing is just bringing the intensity down a little bit and bringing the offset down. Bringing the intensity down. That looks good. We'll also bring the brightness down a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so now we have those mugs. Really adding in that lighting. We'll go back to walls and remove my guidelines real quick. Oopsie, it's under floor, I think. There we go. We'll go and remove those guidelines. All right, so shadows look good there. That looks good. We'll go ahead and move into that next room, and we'll add our shadows for here as well. We'll start with this first. Light is being cast from the fireplace, so we'll cast a little bit of a shadow here, a little shadow on the mug, a shadow here, against here, a shadow here, also cast onto the object itself. Same thing here, shadow. Light going this way, let's put a cast shadow here. Some shadow more on this side of the table because the light is going that direction. So we'll put the light there, here. A little bit of shadow on this thing here. All right, so now you can see the light is being cast from that table. Same thing here. Light is right here, so you would expect a little bit of harder shadows up against here. You'd expect some shadows down below, like this, helping that to pop out. And just to show that there's a little bit more depth here, I'm just going to paint a little bit of a shadow along this piece right here to create this sense of depth. I'll even add a little bit of shadow here and here. So now that will pop out a little bit more. Next step, light source, shadow, 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 right? Same thing here. We'll cast a little bit of shadow from the table. Same thing here. There we go. That looks good. We'll take a step back. Let's make sure that it looks fairly good. That looks good. All right, next one, light source right here, just like before. Shadow's going to be here. A shadow's going to be there. A shadow's going to be here. Shadow's going to be there, and it's going to be there as well. There you go. And then of course, don't forget, we'll put a little bit of shadow along the edge of the table here, so that way those stools really look like they're underneath of it. That looks good. Let's take a step back. Where are we at for time? 11. We're going to keep going until we finish it. I think overall this looks pretty good so far. I like this. The last bit of elements I'll probably add is I like to add a little bit of spark. We'll add a little bit of fey. It's a fireplace. So let's go ahead and put some fey lights. We'll go ahead and put a couple, maybe right here, like this. This should act as like sparks coming off the coals. Same thing here. We'll put another one like maybe like right here. A little bit of sparks coming off the coals there. That looks good. I'll bring the scale up a little bit more. That looks good, just like that. That looks good. Great. Okay. All right, so for the most part, I think overall this looks pretty good. The other part is maybe a light source, maybe coming in from the window. Some people will say, well, how could a light source, how some people have like noticed that when you have multiple windows and the light may be coming from the west side instead of the east side, light is going to go in through all windows. If you wanted to show which direction the light is coming from on the outside, make the light source heavier, less opaque, or more opaque if you wanted to show the light source is coming from the west or the east. But all windows would generally have light coming in from them. So you would put a light source right on top of the window going inward, unless it was nighttime and there was no moonlight. But for the most part, I think this should be okay. I'm not going to worry about window light. We'll go into window light. We'll go into more detail on that on the next one. I did see some mistakes in here real quick I'm going to fix, like these pillars right here got a little too big. So I'll go ahead and just scale those down, make sure they're the right size. There we go. That looks good. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next location here. And just like before, I'm going to add some windows to my room. Some great locations for windows are going to be things like right next to a bed. That way you have natural light. So like right here above, right here where the bed is a great place to put a window. That's a great location. There's no beds against the wall specifically, so we could put another window like right here where that dresser is, another good location for it. And to light up the hallway, we'll add some natural lighting as well, so that way you don't have to put candles in the hallway there. So these windows right here are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for our lighting. That's going to be very helpful. So now that we've done that, we can go back to our light sources, grab our lights, and we'll place them on the windows like this. So I'll go ahead and place that one like that on top of here. Let me go and put that up on the highest layer there. That looks good. We'll put that right in there. If it's a little too bright, you can always just bring the opacity down a little bit. So I'll just copy and paste and put another window there. And if you wanted to have the light be on the north side of it, then what I would do is I would do this. Because the light source is over here, you put that one there, and then you just simply bring the opacity down on it like that. And then that way you can more determine, see how that window is brighter right there. So the light source of the sun must be over on this side, because again, light would go through all windows. It doesn't matter where the sun is. But if you wanted to show the direction of the sun, just make a light source brighter on that window to denote that. So that's kind of a nice little trick there. So I'll go ahead and put the next light source right on top of the window right there. And now I have these very easily established light sources. That's going to be helpful. And just like before, I'll go to light and shadows. I'm going to go to my shape, and I'm going to go across the whole thing just like I did before, just like this. Go to apply. And now I have some shadows lined up here. Let's go ahead and also add in, remember that cool trick when it comes to candles, you want that warmer light. So put the orange light right where the candle is. Put the orange light right where the candle is. That's an unlit candle, so we don't need light there. Let me see, are there any other candles in here? Nope, perfect. That looks good. That looks good. Okay, that looks good. Okay. So then from there, we can add in that larger light source. Positive 10. Let's go ahead and put 100% here. I'll put a nice big light right here because you have the light from the window and the light from the candle. So I'll place the light right there so that way the combined light is right there. That looks good. I'll put another one. Here is the light of the window, and here's the light from the candle. So I'll put the light source just right there so the light kind of filters in. Nice little choice there. And then once I've done that, I'll go back, go to erase, grab your brush, and just start erasing where your light sources are, of course. Go and erase that. Same thing here. I'll erase a little bit here, erase a little bit here. There you go. And so you have these nice light sources. This looks good. Why don't we add in our cast shadows? I didn't add in highlights in the bottom floor. I forgot to do that, so we'll do that here as well. We'll go back, get our color black again, And then now that we've established where our light sources is, it's easy to figure out where the shadows would be. So because the light is going this way in from the inside, the wall is going to cast a little bit of a shadow. So we're going to paint a little bit of a shadow right here, a little bit of a dark shadow right there. The light goes in, puts right here. So let's put a little bit of a shadow right here. Light source here, put a little bit of shadow here. Light source here, casting away from here. We'll put that there. A little bit of light this way like that. And to show a little bit more in the creases, I'll paint a little bit of shadow in the creases. Let me bring the opacity down a little bit and bring the size down. I'm going to scale, zoom in a little bit, and we're going to highlight. We're going to take advantage of these creases here and paint a little bit more shadow in them to show a little bit more depth. So we'll paint in here. Here's a good place for a crease. There we go. And what this will do is it should interact with the light source a little bit more, making it a little bit more interesting by painting in those shadows and those creases. That pops out. That looks good. Let's see here. The least amount of light coming from here. So what we should do is light source goes here, and we'll paint dark, nice and dark in this section right here, as you would expect. So you have light in here. Why don't we paint a little bit of shadow in here and have it going like this? Because the light comes in like this. Same thing here. We'll paint a little bit of a shadow in there. That looks good. Light sources here. Let's paint in a little bit of a shadow. This looks good. A lot of these objects do not have ambient occlusion, so why don't we do that? Let's go grab all our light sources and we'll lock those. Why don't I also, let me go back to floor here. I'm also going to take these pieces of paper. I'm going to lock those. I'm also going to lock my rugs. Remember, these are the things you don't need to have crazy shadows for. And then I think most of it's been selected, so I can go ahead and select most of these. Let's lock that. Let's go ahead and lock that. And then we'll go nothing but stamps, select all, custom object shadow, and then we'll get that ambient occlusion going on, bring that intensity up. There we go. Now those stamps are popping out much, 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 much better. I think overall that looks fairly good. We can go ahead and move on to, oh, actually I forgot to mention highlights. So let's do that real quick. So what I would recommend is just, you could just use this same layer right here. Maybe see if I can switch the layer options to overlay real quick. How much of an impact does that play real quick? Overlay, let me try darken. Nah, I think normal should be fine. We'll do that. Let's go ahead and change our color to that warmish, kind of yellowish, orangish color. Bring the opacity way, way, way down. And then find out where your light source is. Right, we'll choose this one. You'd see a little bit of yellow up against this right here, a little bit of yellow right here like that. You'd have a little bit of yellow right here, a little bit of highlight right there from the candle, a little bit of highlight here, here. Those are all going to be part of the highlights. We also have a window right here, so let's put a little bit of highlight, little yellow highlight there, highlight here, light source here. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of highlight there. Just a little bit of yellow, not too much. Same thing here. We'll go look for the light source. We'll put a little bit of yellow here, as you would expect, along this corner here, some highlights. Let's put some highlight here. And then along this bed right here. And we'll put them on the top of where the creases are, so that way it's got a little bit of a highlight on those creases. Just take a step back and look at it. Yep, looks good. So far, so good. You see those highlights, those light and shadows. Remember, that's just this is the thing to remember that's super important. What creates the 3D is the light and shadow parts. So when you get to this portion, remember, ambient occlusion, just to get the stamp to pop out from the floor, and then you can start painting in your shadows and highlights once you've established where the light sources are. That's always super important. So I think we've established that, so we can go on to this other floor right here. I'm going to do exactly what I did before. I'm going to make sure to do some things. I'm going to lock up all my pieces of paper. Those don't need the ambient occlusion. And then I'll just go ahead and make sure my rugs are also deselected. So I'll select both of those and I'll lock them. There we go. And now I can select all my stamps again, and we'll do that custom object shadow. We'll bring that intensity up just a little bit. There we go. And then we can really make sure that those stamps pop out. That looks good. Go back to light and shadow. We're doing this again. Go ahead and apply your shadow. Make sure the opacity is correct. I think about there is good. Let's go to apply. That looks good. Let's go ahead and throw in our windows. Because this is an attic space, it's probably going to be the hottest room in the entire Tavern and Inn. So my recommendation is throwing a couple windows in here so that your occupants aren't going to absolutely fry to death up here to allow some airflow in here. So we'll put in a couple windows. I'm going to put one window right here, copy and paste another window right here, and then maybe another window right here like this. There we go. So now we have these 3 windows. It should add plenty of natural lighting. That's a good choice. Again, we'll go ahead and grab our light sources like we did before. Oops, let's make that just a little bit bigger. About that size looks good. Bring the scale down. Copy, paste. That looks good. Copy, paste. That looks good. Copy, paste this one. That looks good. Okay. And then we'll also add those light sources. Remember that nice orange light right on top of the candle itself. Right on the candle itself. On that one. That looks good. And then we'll grab those bigger light sources just like we did before. There. And then we'll put lights right on the floor like this where the light comes from the window. Here is a good one. Right here is a good one. And then copy and paste one more in that corner right there like that. That looks good. And then we can go right into the light and shadow bits. Let's go ahead and paint our shadows. A light source right here. So put a little bit of shadow right in the crease of the book. And then have it be casting from that light source right here. Same thing here. We'd have a little bit of shadow from the desk right here and in the crease where that is. We'll also put some light sources, lights along here and here, light source here. So we'll put it along this edge where the table is, where that it is. Utensils are kind of small. We don't really need to add a shadow there. There's a light source coming in from here. So you'd expect some shadows along here. And then you would also expect it along here as well, being cast from the bed. So just like this, being cast from the bed. Same thing here, being cast from the bed. We'll also put some here, as you would expect from the wall, right? The light is coming over. Same thing here. We're going to put a little bit of shadow right here like this, just to show that the light. And then same thing here, right along where the desk is, or where the that is. Same thing here. And then finally, you'll go in light and shadow. I'm going to go to erase, and then you'll go ahead and just erase where your light sources are. Same thing here, 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 and then right there as well. There we go. Moving along so quickly. Cool. We should be done in the next few moments. We're going to do the last bits. Let's go ahead and do the lighting for the roof. This one's not complex. Remember, it's because it's just straight down. So we'll go ahead and put a light source on top of the whole thing itself, which I think would be a good choice. So I'll put a light source just right on top like this. What I'll also do is, I think I'll go like this. There we go. It just goes right on top just like that. That looks good. Copy and paste it. I'll put another light source on the highest point, right on top like that. That should help to make that pop out more. Another light source on top of the fireplace or the chimney, because it's also a high point. There we go. Why don't we also just bring the opacity down a little bit on that one? There we go. That should help to kind of create a little bit more dimension on that one. And then finally we have in here, which I think honestly we should do something like something a little bit more eerie, a little bit more different. Maybe we'll add an eerie light coming out from the crack in the wall, like maybe a green eerie or a purple mysterious light. Why don't we do one first? We'll do a torch that's on the ground, and maybe that will represent someone who got snatched or kidnapped that was down here last. That might be interesting. So I'll throw in a light source. Let me make sure I'm on the right floor here. Let's go to floor, put that light source there. Don't forget the small one. Oopsie, wrong layer. Let's push this down a layer. There we go. Let's make sure this orange one is right on top like that, and then a bigger yellow one on top of that. There we go. That looks good. And then I'm also going to create a light source coming out of here. Now I'm going to use the orange because it already has a little bit more color in it. So that way when I go to the U and I go to change it, it should work a little bit better. So if I go to U, you'll see that I can change it. And let's see what color works best. Whether I think purple looks really cool, green looks cool. Let's go with purple. I think purple is pretty unnatural feeling, so let's go with that. I'm going to copy and paste, put another one right here. Let's go up to walls, copy and paste another one. Let's go ahead and put it on the highest layer like this. I'm going to put it right up against here like this, just to make sure to really get the light source coming right out of the cracks of this, like this. Copy, paste, get another light source in here like this. There we go. Now take a step back, and you'll notice that that purple, that eerie purple, so maybe when that aquifer broke through the wall, it wasn't natural causes. It could have been something unnatural. So that purple kind of brings that unnatural lighting, and that really allows you to really play a lot too with different types of light colors and things like that. So I think that's a good choice. We'll start with that. I'll also go ahead and grab that floor light, make it a little bit bigger, so that way I can really get it going really nice and thick like this. Yeah, it could also be necromancy, absolutely. Maybe the legions of undead are digging out of their graves, and they found the aquifer, and they followed it, and then they were able to break through this cellar, and then now they can go and attack the patrons of this inn. Whatever it might be, right? All kinds of fun stuff that you can do there. Why don't we also put a little bit of these fey lights here? But what we'll do, of course, is we'll make them purple instead. It makes sense to have fey lights be the same color as the light source itself. So I'll go over here, go to hue, get that purple in there. That looks good. And just kind of place that just right up against here. Let's go all the way up. There we go. Now that really adds a little bit more mysterious, creepy, kind of an eerie kind of feel to it. Why don't we also go to light and shadows? And what I'll do is I'll make this extra dark because it is a cellar, right? So I'll go ahead and go to apply, apply again. Now I have this very nice dark cellar. I'll go to erase. And what I'll do is I don't want to have it be too bright. So I'm going to add just a little bit there, and then I'll paint a little bit and add a little bit here as well. That looks good. And then I can go in and now paint in my shadows now that I've added my light sources. So there's a light coming from this wall. So there needs to be a shadow cast from this barrel right here, as you would expect. There's a light source right here. This looks good. This looks good. Let's go ahead and cast shadows against here. In that corner, there'd be a shadow here. Let's also paint a little shadow like this. Shadow going this way from that light source, from here. No light in here whatsoever. So what I'll end up doing is just kind of paint in nice, thick, kind of dark shadow. It's nice and dark in there, hard to see anything. Maybe the creatures that escaped from that aquifer are in this very, very dark room right here. So we'll make it nice and dark, mysterious and scary. And then of course, this is the fun part. Now we can go ahead and add in some like purple lighting on top of things. So we'll go ahead and grab that color. We're going to go ahead and choose our purple color like this. Make sure it's the right color. We'll go a little bit more this way. I think that fits about right. Bring that opacity down, and I'll go ahead and just go ahead and paint some of my shadow, my highlights. So I'll paint a little bit of purple along there. I'll put a little bit of purple along the walls or on the floor as well. Let me see, here's some purple there along here, along these stamps here, along this stamp here, I think. Let's go ahead and bring the opacity down just a little bit more. There we go. We get a little bit of purple lighting on that. That looks good. A little bit of purple lighting on here. And then maybe a little bit of purple light kind of coming in from right here. So that way it kind of emanates a little bit into this room, so that way players can see that weird, gloomy purple color. There we go. That looks good. I just want to make sure that this looks right. Cool. That looks thick enough. It doesn't look like there was a collapse there. You've got this nice purple glowing parts here. I think overall this looks good. The last bit of detail you want to throw in is just to show a sense of danger. We could also throw in like a corpse that's been submerged or floating. Let's go ahead and use 2.0. We could use, maybe it was maybe a barmaid, maybe, and it's a nice drowned figure. So let's go ahead and make sure that we get the scale right. I think right about there looks right. Let me make sure that I put it on the right layer, the floor layer. They're floating in the water. Maybe we'll put them up in the corner right here. kind of like this. That's about the right size. Let's go up a little bit more. I'm going to put them right in the dark side so it's really hard to see. Make sure that I got that scale right. There we go. You could also maybe say that maybe they're, I got a fun idea. Why don't we actually add some purple lights on their eyes as well? And then what we could do is make it look like maybe they're have been taken over by a creature of some kind. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make sure to erase, unselect these and move this over to here. And I'm going to go ahead and erase just a little bit of the light where the eyes are at, so that way those pop out. So I'll paint a little, erase a little bit here and really get those lights kind of popping out a little bit. Let's bring the opacity a little bit higher up. There we go. There we go. A little bit better. Bring the scale up. There we go. Take a step back a little bit more. That looks good. Okay, yeah, there we go. That way there's a little bit of eerie light coming off of their face, and it should be a little bit easier to also kind of see them now. There we go, a little bit right about there. Cool. All right. Yeah, this looks really good. Let me take a step back, and I think that's it. I think we've kind of added in our details. I really like the way that it turned out. I don't think I missed any light sources. I think overall this just turned out pretty dang good. And I'll make sure to publish this. I'll make it clonable and I'll add it to the video description if you want to use it yourself. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the stream, we are going to make a side view or side scroller version of this map as well. We might as well create continuity before between different maps. So sometime this month or this coming month in July, we will turn this into a side view map. I see someone's got a question here. Maple does. Before we leave, remember something I want to ask you. Would it be possible to add to the queue of stream something regarding the astral plane? Oh, that sounds like a super cool idea. Yeah, I'd love that. Astral plane sounds great. I'll go ahead and write that down right now. I got a little notepad next to me. Astral plane. Love that idea. Might have to give it another name. I want to make sure that the astral plane is not copyrighted. It's not official IP or anything. I don't think it is. I'll have to research that first. Let me know if there is. If it's not official IP, then we'll use astral plane for the title. And if it is IP, then we'll call it something else like the ethereal realm or something like that. We'll figure it out. All right. Thanks, everyone. This was great. Really appreciate it. Good start to our week, a little Monday session. And I'll go ahead and have the stream calendar for July and the map prompt calendar. I'll have those up tomorrow so that way you'll see what's going on. Basically, we're going to have a lot of your map is flat, your map ruin my map, sync my battle map. I'm going to basically, your map is flat was a really popular video, and so people really liked it when we took someone else's map and did something to it. So the next several videos next month will be doing the same thing. We'll take people's maps and we'll do things to it. It's always nice to use other people's maps besides my own all the time. So that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. And as always, if you want your map remade, sunk, ruined, you want it not to be flat anymore, you're going to join the Discord server. Make sure you get all the proper roles so you can see all the channels. Once you get the roles done, then you're going to go ahead and move over to the channel called Map Makeover. Make sure the map is published and clonable. Publish that link, put that link in the Map Makeover channel and what you want done to that map. Ping me and I'll add your map to the queue and we'll make sure that it gets shown in one of the streams, okay? Well, all right, thanks everyone. I had a lot of fun. Please stay safe and healthy and merry map making. I will see you all on Wednesday, okay? Take care. Bye.